Hey guys, welcome to a new video. Like, comment and subscribe if you enjoy. Without any further interruptions, enjoy the What If. Chapter 5. Sternritter Kurisaki Ichigo. Sternritter Training Grounds, Silburn. Ichigo frowned as he kicked Jugram's Freund shield to put some distance between them. It was exactly after 3 days, when Jugram started to use his shield during their training. Ichigo learned that any wound he caused to Jugram would be redirected into the shield, making him basically immune to any kind of damage during their spar. He thought of it to be what Jugram's Schrift was at first, but soon realized that it wasn't. Or rather a part of his Schrift to be precise. Just what kind of ability did his Schrift with the letter B held, if it was capable of something like that? Ichigo was almost dying to know about it at this point. Another 3 whole days, but Ichigo wasn't able to find a way to get through such absolute defense without resorting to his hollow powers. He would receive his Schrift tonight, which meant the intense full week of training has come to an end. Ichigo was determined to see Jugram's Schrift before today's training was over. Is there any limit to the damage that shield can absorb, Hashwalt? I'm seriously tempted to test out my Sero at this point. I didn't want to admit it at first, but I can't get through your defense if I don't bring up more destructive techniques, rather than restricting myself to the use of my Reishi sword. Ichigo admitted in defeat. It seems that you have forgotten the very purpose of our training, Kurisaki. You have far exceeded my expectations on your progress of your swordsmanship. You do not have any reason to be so disappointed by the fact that you couldn't overcome my defense while restricting yourself from the use of other means at your disposal. Furthermore, had you used your more destructive techniques as you put it, I would have had to resort to using my Schrift without a doubt. Jugram chuckled, which wasn't really surprising to Ichigo at this point, since Jugram started to show some of his emotions more openly as their training progressed. Ichigo had to admit that Jugram was probably the best teacher he had been given the liberty of learning from. It really was no contest between him and the other teachers he had been under the tutelage of, as the progress in his skills weren't remotely compared to Urahara or even Yoruichi's training. If the Ichigo of today had a fight with the Ichigo from a week ago, he knew that its result would be a one-sided match. He had improved that much, just by learning proper swordsmanship from Jugram. I think I just wanted to push you to the point where you actually had to use your Schrift. Ichigo muttered, somewhat embarrassed at Jugram's words of praise. The Freund shield is a part of my Schrift, so wouldn't that count? Jugram noticed Ichigo's annoyed look at his words. I guess not. Ichigo shifted his stance to continue the training, not expecting Jugram to sheathe his sword. My Schrift is the balance, Kurisaki. It can take the misfortune that occurs in my sphere of influence, and disperse it to those who had the luck of experiencing good fortune. If you were to give me a fatal wound, it could count as a misfortune to me, while a good fortune to you. I can redirect it to you, who experienced the good fortune of succeeding to wound me. That is basically how my Schrift works, maintaining the balance of the world. Jugram explained his Schrift, causing Ichigo's eyes widen at the absurdity of his Schrift. It didn't take all that long for Ichigo to realize the very nature of his Schrift. Wait a minute, if your shield is a part of your Schrift. Your shield essentially absorbs the misfortune that occurred on your body. Ichigo could easily connect the dots. If what he guessed was true, Jugram's Schrift was truly a fearsome ability. What you're guessing is true. And if I use the balance. Ichigo felt cuts and gashes opening up all over his body, not that it was fatal to him. It didn't take more than 5 seconds to heal completely with his instant regeneration, but it was more than enough to understand how Jugram's Schrift worked. Are all the Sternritter's Schrifts this ridiculous? No, never mind, I already know the answer, which only makes me to look forward to receive mine. At this point, I really doubt the Shinigami's chances of winning this war. The Gote 13 would be completely annihilated within days, from what I know of their capabilities. Ichigo didn't really expect Jugram to tell him otherwise. It wouldn't do you any good if you underestimate the enemy, as there is only a very fine line between confidence and arrogance. Always expect the unexpected, Kurisaki. Remember, our final goal isn't just defeating the Soul Society. Ichigo nodded at Jugram's words. If Jugram could stay level-headed with a powerful Schrift like that, he himself really shouldn't have any problems with it. Although, it has been quite some time since I had the chance to use my Schrift to this degree. Fatal wounds are fatal for a reason, after all. Even then, you didn't seem to be surprised at receiving such wounds. Jugram remarked dryly, hiding his surprise at Ichigo being able to keep his calm even when receiving such wounds. I already knew what would happen when I figured out how your shield works, Hashwalt. Besides, I trust you enough to think that you know what you're doing. I wanted to see how your Schrift works, and you showed me how. It's just simple as that, although I would have appreciated it if it didn't dirty my shirt, Ichigo stated, taking off his shirt which was all bloody due to the wounds. He grabbed a towel from the bench near him, which was used to clean his blood instead of sweat like usual. I suppose. Jugram trailed off. Ichigo started to stretch his body, while noticing how another familiar Sternritter was approaching him in a leisurely manner with his hands stuck in the pocket of his trousers. Phew, now where did all your wounds disappear, Kurisaki? You sure are full of surprises. Oh, hello Bazz-B. If you're looking for a spar, you better wait until the ceremony is over. Preferably tomorrow if you will, since I think we barely have an hour left. Ichigo greeted the Sternritter with a faint grin. Nah, I'm gonna wait till you get used to your Schrift, Kurisaki. It's no fun when I have to hold back my Schrift. I've trained it for a long time, so it just doesn't feel right. Bazz-B shook his head. Ichigo understood where he was coming from, since Bazz-B was one of the Sternritters that went through the First War. The fact that Jugram and Bazz-B who didn't look above their mid-20s were actually over 1,000 years old was something Ichigo had trouble getting used to. During the week, he had gotten acquainted with a lot of the Ritters. He found himself accepted to them surprisingly easy, considering how he was pretty much on the enemy's side until recently. He could only guess that it had something to do with how the girls reacted in outrage at the Shinigami's actions regarding his mother. It was an awkward experience, but still somewhat heartwarming at the same time. He wasn't all that surprised when the most visually furious girl was actually Bambietta. They had struck a form of friendship after their first fight, and it only tightened as they had their second, third, and many more fights after that. Her sadistic personality bothered him sometimes, but he could see that she cared greatly for her friends, or subordinates as she puts it. He honestly saw no problem in befriending her, when he had already come to terms with Jazelle's personality. Bazz-B was one of the few Sternritters he had immediately formed a friendship with. He was a cocky, hot-headed, and a nasty bastard, quoting Liltato, if he were to be honest, but he found it surprisingly easy to get along with him. Seriously, all it took was a compliment to his hairstyle and that was saying something about him. The superstar, Masked a Masculine, and the Iron Kangdu were the other two he was comfortable with the idea of hanging out. Mask was a fun guy, although it was a bit hard to follow his exaggerated demeanor from time to time. Ichigo had to admit that one of the reasons he liked Mask was the way he phrased the Shinigami as villains. Really, he couldn't help but agree whenever he said that. Kang held a similar atmosphere to Jugram around himself, which was fine by him. Compared to the less pleasant members of the Sternritter, he was pretty much a godsend if Ichigo was being honest about it. The others, well, describing them as weird would be an understatement to them. As na paragraph mark DT suited his epithet, the fear, really well in his opinion, since he did have a pretty menacing look with his spiked mask and all. He seemed to respect his majesty greatly, and fear him for some reason at the same time. Even so, he wasn't overly unpleasant to have a conversation with. It was just his looks that kind of made him feel uncomfortable to be around as na paragraph mark DT. The overkill, Driscoll Bursey was basically a Quincy version of Zaraki Kenpachi personality-wise, except the fact that he enjoyed the act of killing instead of fighting. Thankfully, it meant that Ichigo didn't need to deal with him unnecessarily since there really was no reason for Driscoll to seek him out, when Zaraki would have pestered him for a fight. He was somewhat glad that there wasn't another Kenpachi he had to deal with in Silburn. The fact that he had come to terms with his own nature didn't mean he wanted someone to bother him all the time trying to fight him. Ichigo found out on the third day that the only Sternritter he thought to be unpleasant enough to ignore completely was the love, Pepe Wakabrata. Meninas found Pepe to be creepy, which Ichigo agreed to wholeheartedly. Honestly, as if his attire wasn't repulsive enough, his behavior was even more disgusting in addition to that. The way he thought himself to be a godsend to everyone, and makes them want to love him. Absolutely disgusting. Ichigo just went out of his way and ignored him all the time, which turned out to be the best action he could take concerning Pepe. The most surprising person was Askin, as Ichigo didn't really know what to think of him. He was annoying one second, pleasant the next, arrogant after that, and so on. If Ichigo were to describe him in one word, it would most likely be eccentric. Maybe he could get used to him over time, or not. Baz B tilted his head and asked Ichigo a question, which instantly gained the other two Quincy's attention. So, what are you expecting from your Schrift? Although I'm sure it won't be as hot as the heat, I reckon yours would be pretty cool enough. It wounds my pride to admit, but my thoughts were along the same lines as him. Jugram closed his eyes to ignore Baz B's smug look, which would no doubt be painting his face. Well, I honestly have no idea what it would be like, or even what letter it would be. I mean, I know that the only letter left without a Sternritter is the A. But I've heard that the letter is basically His Majesty's. Ichigo scratched the back of his head. Yes, His Majesty does hold the letter A, as it is the only fitting letter for his ability, the Almighty. Jugram nodded in an affirmative manner. The Almighty. It holds the ability to foresee the future. There really isn't a better fitting designation for it, wouldn't you agree? Ichigo's eyes widened in shock. An ability to foresee the future. Although, he cannot use it at its fullest until the time when his power is fully restored, which would be a little more than a year from now. Even so, he can see glimpses of the future from time to time. If that's the case, it really does deserve to be called the Almighty. Anyway, I have absolutely no idea what my Schrift would be like. Weren't the other Sternritters the same? As far as I know, one's Schrift should either be in relation to the personality or desires of the one who has bestowed the Schrift. In Baz B or my case, it is the personality that affected our Schrifts, while some like Jazelle and Leil's Schrift would be the desire of the said person which became their Schrifts. Oh, I just became a lot more uncertain about it. I mean, my personality was a lot like Bambietta except for her sadistic nature when I was a substitute Shinigami, but now, I'm not really sure about it. And my desires, it would have been something like protect the people close to me back then, but I'd say it's a lot closer to vengeance towards the Shinigami who wronged my mom at this point. So knowing that doesn't really help. Ichigo replied while frowning. What's the point in thinking that hard about it when we'll get to know about it soon? Besides, I think your girlfriends are here. Why isn't there a hot girl who appreciates my hot hair in Silburn? Baz B teased Ichigo, somewhat envious of his popularity among the female Sternritters, except Berenice. Ichigo had to admit that Baz B was unique in his own way, with him being a hell lot more immature compared to Haschwald. They aren't my girlfriends, Baz B. Ichigo sighed, even though he knew that it could become the truth if he wanted. He had initially thought that Menina's was joking about how she and Candace both wanted to date him at the same time. He had never considered the idea of them actually being serious about it. He also knew that Jazelle was on the edge with them because of it, and he needed to make a choice about the matter, be it sooner or later. Seriously, he hadn't even thought of dating a girl until he met Jazelle, since most of the girls in his age group didn't really interest him all that much. He found Menina's to be a sweet person with how much she cared about him and her friends, although it was probably a common trait in their group. Including even Leiltato and Bambietta. She held a comfortable atmosphere around her, and knew exactly where his line of feeling uncomfortable with their flirting lied. Her personality was positively endearing, somewhat similar to Orihime but a little more mature. He wasn't really sure about how to put it, but he couldn't deny that he was attracted to her, more and more as time went by. Candace, on the other hand, he wasn't really all that comfortable to be around at first with her revealing attire and constant attempts of flirting. Even though she did try to keep her flirty nature under control, it just seemed to come naturally with her. And then her personality. In his opinion, Candace was probably the middle ground of Menina's and Bambietta. She had her own temper, albeit less volatile compared to Bambietta. Unless someone happens to ruin her hair. Apparently, she cared about her hairstyle above almost everything else, seeing how she actually woke up at least an hour earlier than the other girls, just to keep her hair in the style she wanted. He really was curious about whether she'd blow up at His Majesty or not, if he actually ruined her hair. Somehow, he could imagine it happening. Anyways, Ichigo wasn't all that sure about her character yet, but he kept Menina's words about Candace in his mind. There was also Jazelle's antagonistic behavior towards Candace, which she had no idea of how it came to be. If just the thought of him getting together with Candace made Jazelle all worked up, there must be an important reason for her to act like that. Jazelle was someone he admitted to having a crush on, both in looks and the positive side of her personality. He'd rather not think of the negative side most of the time, since just because he had come to terms with it didn't mean that he liked it. Jazelle was obviously attracted to him if her possessive behavior towards him was any indication of it, and he secretly found her possessiveness cute and alluring at the same time. Ichigo could easily see himself in a relationship with Jazelle in the near future, and was fine with the idea. But why was he hesitating? "Hello, Ichi-chan." Ichigo was interrupted from his thoughts as Jazelle clung to his back, her arms linked around his neck. "Hi, Gigi." Ichigo didn't miss Baz B's wary look at Jazelle as he greeted her. One of the things he learned during the week was that most of the Ritters tried to avoid Jazelle while the Soldats feared her. Hell, even some of the Sternritter seemed to be afraid of her too. It really was no wonder that Jazelle broke down in front of him when he put her insecurities to rest. "Hi, sweetie." Candace blew him a hand kiss with a wink, making Ichigo blush like he always did when Candace flirted with him. Ichigo couldn't see Jazelle's expression at the moment, but he figured that she was most likely sending a murderous glare directed to Candace. "How are you feeling, Ichigo?" "In my case, I hardly caught any sleep the day before I received my Schrift in anticipation. It was a little anticlimactic if I'm being honest about it." Ichigo sighed as he heard Jazelle's growl when Menina's clung to his arm, while Candace took the other. He didn't even need to look at Baz B to know how he was giving him the, "not your girlfriend's my ass" look. "Whores," Liltato muttered, while Bambietta merely smirked at Ichigo's look of discomfort. It was fun to see her new friend in an uncomfortable position like that, although she felt her stomach aching for some unknown reason. "Well, I am excited at the thought, if I'm being honest about it. And I need to change my clothes and all, if you three ladies don't mind." Ichigo almost choked at their following words. "I don't really think you need to wear anything." Menina sighed dreamily. "I agree wholeheartedly with Meni. Maybe you should stay like this all the time. For us." Candace purred in his ears, her hands roaming around his bicep, knowing from experience that touching his torso would only freak him out. Jazelle didn't even bother answering the question, completely enamored with Ichigo's scent. "You bitches really should let him go and get himself ready for his ceremony. His Majesty most certainly wouldn't appreciate him appearing half-naked, you know." Ichigo sent a look of gratitude to Liltato, as Menina's and Candace hesitantly stepped back from him. "Fine," Jazelle grumbled, although Liltato knew that mentioning the Emperor would work instantly on making Jazelle release her embrace on Ichigo. She was, after all, one of the most loyal Sternritter in Silbern. "We'll see you after the ceremony." Sternritter Kurisaki. Bambietta teased Ichigo with a sly grin. "Not yet, Sternritter Basterbine. Not yet." Ichigo chuckled. The Assembly Hall, Silbern. "My children, we have a new addition to our ranks of the Sternritter. An Echt Quincy from the world of the living, proven by his demonstration of blood on his own immediately after awakening his Quincy blood. The #1 special war power, who has come to pledge his loyalty to us. Step forward, my son born in darkness." Kurisaki Ichigo. Ichigo approached the Quincy monarch and knelt down on one of his knees, showing his allegiance and respect towards the Emperor. "Grand Master, if you would." Jugram handed over a basin filled with red liquid to Ichigo at Yhwach's orders. Ichigo already knew that it was Yhwach's blood from the information old man Zangetsu revealed to him. Although how he actually forgot to mention about Yhwach's, the Almighty, was disconcerting to him, as it really wasn't like him to do so. Ichigo understood that by drinking his blood, he receives a part of Yhwach's soul. He also knew that old man Zangetsu was confident about him being able to absorb that piece of soul and make it a part of him. Essentially, Ichigo had nothing to lose from this process even if Yhwach decided to discard him, not that Ichigo expected the Emperor to do so. "May I, Your Majesty?" Ichigo asked Yhwach, raising the basin to his lips. "You may, Kurisaki Ichigo." Yhwach nodded in an affirmative manner, and Ichigo drank the blood without hesitation. Ichigo dropped the basin at the burning sensation that spread all over his body, and clutched his fists. Ichigo felt a newfound power awakening inside of him, and knew what kind of possibility it held instantly. He couldn't use all of it yet, but knew that it wouldn't take him long before he could use his Schrift like it was his own. Ichigo couldn't stop the smirk forming on his lips as the power of his Quincy side pulsed throughout his senses. Rise, Kurisaki Ichigo, you are to join the Sternritter, as the Sternritter, eh? Yhwach declared with satisfaction clearly showing on his face, his sword resting on Ichigo's left shoulder in its sheathed state. He knew that the part of his soul in Ichigo lost connection with him immediately. He hadn't foreseen this, but Kurisaki Ichigo exceeded his expectations. Yes, he would serve as a crucial role in his plan. Sternritter, eh? Kurisaki Ichigo. The amnesia, at your service. I am most honored at being given the very letter that belongs to you. I shall not disappoint, your majesty. Ichigo bowed his head, as many of the Sternritters blinked in surprise at his epithet. They were expecting something more, flashy or explosive from his personality they had read from the dating, but it seemed that they were wrong about the matter. If its designation was any indication, it was most likely an extremely powerful Schrift. It really was fitting for the Sternritter, eh, who was a special war power at that. Askin was the first to snap out from his thoughts, and clapped his hands in approval. A few more Ritters followed suit, which caused the soldats to do the same, although theirs were more out of respect. Yes, I can see why you have awakened such a marvelous Schrift, and there is an information you might have been expecting since your arrival. Your Grand Master will inform the specifics to you at a later time. Ichigo's head perked up at Yhwach's words. He knew that it had something to do with the very first person in his life that he had sworn vengeance to. I am most grateful, your majesty. Ichigo bowed once more in gratitude to the emperor, for upholding his promise about providing aid in his situation a week ago. Tsukishima had slipped through his mind at the revelation of his mother's suffering at the hands of the Shinigami, but the very reason that pushed him to join the Wandenreich came from Tsukishima. It was most likely why he had come to receive the amnesia, as a means to an end to his unfinished business in the world of the living. The very ability that should be capable of reversing Tsukishima's Book of the End, by making them forget the existence of Tsukishima. But would it be the best for him to do it now, with the risk of compromising the existence of the Wandenreich? Ichigo now belonged to the Wandenreich, and he served his majesty like the other Sternritter did. Of course his past ties were personally important to him, but it really wasn't appropriate for a Sternritter to put it over the future of the Wandenreich. He had a lot to think about, but taking his revenge on Tsukishima wouldn't prove to be a problem if his majesty decided to disclose the information about it, right? One of the towers in Silburn. So, Ichi-chan, is there a reason you're taking me with you to see Jugram? I mean, you seem to be enjoying yourself with Meninas and Candace, and... Ichi-chan. Ichigo stopped in his footsteps when he noticed how Jazelle dropped the use of Meninas and Candace's pet names. Gigi, before I came here, they were your best friends, right? Ichigo asked Jazelle, who nodded with a little hesitation and uncertainty at his question. I think my indecisiveness is getting in between your friendship with them, Gigi. You didn't even refer to them as Meni and Candy like you always did. Am I hurting you because I agreed to Meni about giving them a chance? Jazelle bit her lower lip, as she didn't even notice the fact that she had called her friends by their names. I'm not as good looking as Candy, or... Jazelle waved her hands over her body. I'm nowhere near well developed like them. Friend or not, I have my insecurities, Ichi-chan. I was scared that you would go for their better looks instead of me. Ichigo sighed and took her into his arms. He should have known better than to lead her on. She was the first girl he was even remotely interested in, and he had hurt her even if it wasn't his intention to do so. It wasn't like he had any experience with a situation like this. Will you go out with me, Gigi? Ichigo whispered lovingly in Jazelle's ears, and her eyes widened in shock at hearing those words from him. The very words that she wanted to hear, but wasn't sure if she would get to hear from Ichigo. Jazelle stared at his eyes, only to find out that he actually seemed to be serious about it. But I'm nowhere near. Jazelle didn't get to finish her words as Ichigo leaned down and caught her lips with his own, effectively silencing her. It wasn't perfect, as it was Ichigo's first kiss while Jazelle was no different. Jazelle wrapped her arms tightly around Ichigo's neck, intent on never letting this moment to come to an end. Ichigo's hands roamed around her back, occasionally caressing her long smooth hair. Ichigo instinctively nibbled on her lips, causing Jazelle to break the kiss in surprise. Neither spoke a word in the comfortable silence, their eyes completely focused on each other. Jazelle licked her lips once, twice, and pulled Ichigo down into another kiss. She brushed her tongue against his lips, noticing how it was less awkward than the first one. She knew then and there that her favorite activity from now on would be sharing moments like this with her Ichi-chan. Ichigo seemed to understand what she wanted, and parted his lips in response. Jazelle's tongue invaded his mouth as soon as he granted access, desperate to conquer everything within her reach. Her hands were now tangled with Ichigo's hair, enjoying the sensation that exploded whenever their tongues brushed against each other. It didn't take long before they started to wrestle with their tongue, completely unaware of their surroundings. They weren't even sure about how much time has passed since their first kiss, which led to a longer second. When they eventually broke from their lip lock, Jazelle let out a sigh in disappointment. Ichigo gave her a soft smile, and pecked her lips to show his affection for her once more. "It was my first kiss. And it was better than I could have ever imagined," Jazelle said, burying her head into Ichigo's chest as she drank in his scent. "The same for me, Gigi. I've never wanted to kiss someone so badly until now. You really don't have to be so insecure about yourself, Gigi. I'm not going to lie that I don't find the other girls attractive. It would be rude of me to do so. But if I were to choose between you and them, it would be you. I wasn't lying when I told you that you were the light that saved me. I started crushing on you the moment we met, you know. You actually had to kiss me on the cheek to make me come back to my senses. Your eyes were so beautiful back then. And they still are." Ichigo let out a chuckle at the memory of him being completely lost at her beautiful eyes. Jazelle blushed at his compliment, while smiling slyly. "Well, had I known that our first kiss would be something like this, it wouldn't have been an innocent kiss on your cheek." Ichigo rolled his eyes at her comment. "So, I didn't hear an answer about my question. Should I inform the other girls that we decided to go official? Or should I take it as a no and inform them that I'm interested in their offer?" Ichigo teased Jazelle, which made her pull him in another short kiss. "No way, Ichi-chan. You're mine. Well, I suppose I'm yours too in that manner. As much as I would like to continue this, Yhwach should be waiting for me." Ichigo ran his hand down her hair, only to be interrupted by another voice. "There's no need to worry about me. I see that you two were busy, barely a few steps away from my quarters at that. Although I do have a request, if you two don't mind. Please refrain from having children until the war is over." Jugram deadpanned, although he thought that their relationship would be a good influence for both of them. Jazelle almost froze in shock as they were caught in the act by Jugram. "Ah, Yhwach, or am I supposed to call you Grandmaster now since I'm a Sternritter?" Ichigo joked back, spotting the faint smile that lasted for barely a second. "Hello, Jugo, how much did you see?" Jazelle greeted Jugram in an unusually embarrassed manner for someone like her. "Enough to know that he is your first kiss. And no, Sternritter Kurisaki. You may call me Jugram if you want. Just never call me Jugo like her or Bazb and we won't have any problems." Jugram replied dryly, "I guess, in that case you should just call me Ichigo. I had enough experience of a lifetime with a Quincy who called me Kurisaki all the time, anyway." They made their way into Jugram's quarters, and Ichigo noticed that it was really plain, which wasn't all that surprising to see from a room that belonged to Jugram. Jugram led them to a small table, and poured each of them a cup of black tea. "Thanks, it has a nice scent. I'm not that much of a tea person, but I think could enjoy something like this." Ichigo commented and took a sip. "It's Earl Grey. Anyway, I expected you to come alone, but I can see why you brought her along. You wanted to take her with you, in case you were allowed to leave for the world of the living. Am I correct in my assumption?" Ichigo nodded at Jugram's question. Jugram picked up a metal tablet from a desk, which was the datum that he had heard about so many times until he actually laid his hands on one. This information came from the reports of the Onmitsukita. Apparently they have been keeping track of Tsukishima Sha, Kura's location due to the potential danger his Fullbring holds. His current location is in a small city, about 50 miles north from Karakura town. And there is an Onmitsukita squad consisting of 10 scattered over the vicinity of the city. His Majesty permitted you the access to the world of the living to uphold his promise regarding your recruitment. He also allowed you to take another Sternritter with you if you requested, so you need not ask for permission. Jugram pointed at Jazelle's direction, who looked giddy at the thought of having their first date. I see. And would it be right for me to presume that under no circumstances we are to compromise our existence to the Onmitsukita? Ichigo asked. You will be given a cloak that conceals not only your Reiatsu, but also your looks, as you are a known factor to them. Furthermore, your disappearance has been discussed in today's captain's meeting, which means they will be searching for you as well. If you are discovered, you may use your hollow Raryoku to eliminate them. Jugram replied, only to be confused at Ichigo's response. Am I allowed to use my Schrift in that case? You're the amnesia. We do not know the exact capability of your Schrift, so for what reason are you asking permission for the use of your Schrift? I can easily make them forget ever seeing me with my Schrift if I am spotted. Wouldn't it cause less suspicion on our part rather than make them look like they were killed by hollows? And I'm unsure if they have any information about my hollow Reiatsu. It wouldn't be a good idea if they actually did. Ichigo voiced his opinion, which made Jugram consider which was the better course of action Ichigo could take. Maybe you're right on the matter, so I shall leave it to your decision. Jugram concluded. Also, if your Schrift is capable of solving the problem that concerns your friends and family, you are allowed to visit Karakura. No, I won't ask for that. There is a high chance of exposing the Wandenreich with how there are more than at least 3 captain-level former Shinigami in the area. I don't really think they would have any reason to be involved in the upcoming war if their memories aren't corrected. I think I can wait until the war is over, Ichigo said with a steely resolve evident in his eyes. He had thought about the situation, and decided that it would be best if he kept them away from the war. Jazelle took his hand in hers to comfort him, as she knew how much it hurt him to leave her sisters in their current state. I see. Jugram's eyes widened in shock at the level of Ichigo's loyalty to the Wandenreich. The amount of respect he held towards the Sternritter grew tenfold at how he placed the future of the Wandenreich over even his past ties. So, when can we leave for this? Ichigo asked in anticipation of finally getting his well-deserved revenge on Tsukishima. He had made him go through the very worst experience of his life, even overshadowing the shock of his mother's death. He had promised to kill him, and make his death the most painful one that ever happens in this world. Ichigo was going to keep his word on making Tsukishima regret ever approaching him, although he was somewhat disappointed that Ginjo was going to be executed by the Shinigami. Well, one is better than none, I suppose. You can leave immediately if you wish, as the cloak is already prepared for use. You cannot use the Gate of the Sun, as it will most likely alert the Onmitsukita. Since you have yet to learn how to access the Schattenbereich to travel through the shadows, let Jazelle do the job in your stead. There is a limit to the time you have outside the shadows, so finish everything before your time is up. Also, be prepared for your most important training when you return. Jugram replied, handing Ichigo the cloak he needed to use. Ichigo put it on himself immediately, eager to take his leave. He noticed that the cloak was covered with black from head to toe, a deep hood attached to it for the purpose of covering the upper part of his face. Ichigo noted to think about Jugram's mention of training later. Well, then I guess we should make it quick. Do you want to go, Gigi? Ichigo asked out of courtesy, already knowing that she would agree immediately. You obviously know my answer, Ichi-chan. Jazelle attached herself to Ichigo's back, with her arms locked over his neck like usual. Goodbye, Jugo. See you later. Jugram rubbed his eyes in annoyance, as the two disappeared through the shadows. His Majesty would be satisfied greatly when he hears about just how loyal to the Wandenreich Kurisaki Ichigo is. Jugram stood up and draped the Sternritter cloak around himself, and left from his quarters. It was the time for him to take the mask of the ruler. The world of the living. Ichigo emerged from the shadows in an empty alley with Jazelle attached to his back. He couldn't help but notice the lack of the freezing cold he experienced during his first shadow travel. It was only a week since he left, but Ichigo had to admit that he didn't miss Karakura town as much as he thought he would. The girls were surprisingly fun to hang out, even more so than his friends from Karakura town. He still missed his sisters though. Jazelle gave Ichigo a peck on his cheek and whispered in his ear. "I'll search for the unusual Reiatsu around the city. Just head to the direction I point to." Ichigo couldn't help but think that the situation held too much similarity to Kenpachi and Yakiru, and sincerely hoped that Jazelle knew where she was going. Jazelle pointed her finger towards their left a few seconds later, and Ichigo just prayed while walking towards where she pointed. Ichigo walked through the city filled with people heading home from work or school, and mused to himself that he was basically skiving off from school. Not that it really mattered to him that much anymore. When they win the war, maybe he could use a little self-study. "Mommy, that guy's scary. He looks like a reaper." "Oh, sweetie, it's just his clothes. There's no such thing as a reaper." Ichigo couldn't help but chuckle at the little boy and his mother's conversation. If only they knew. As they walked along the streets, Ichigo noticed that a lot of people sent wary glances at him since they weren't in their soul form, which meant they were visible to them. He was a Quincy now, so there wasn't any need for him to take his soul form. But wearing a pitch-black cloak in a populated city seemed like a dumb idea, especially when he had a girl who was wearing a white military uniform on his back. They stood out among the crowd like a sore thumb. He could only hope that they just thought of him as a cosplayer or something along the lines of it, and not a criminal. After about 20 minutes of following her navigation, he came to the realization that Jazelle was exactly like Yakiru. He let out a sigh and was about to say that he would try to find him, when Jazelle pointed to another direction. "Found it. Does that one match the person you're searching for?" Ichigo froze in his steps as he noticed the person she was pointing at. His height was a free giveaway, as Ichigo found himself glaring at the familiar face of Tsukishima Sakura. He quickly caught Jazelle's outstretched arm and gently brought it down, while stepping back into the shadows of an alley. Ichigo inwardly apologized about comparing Jazelle to Yakiru. "It's him. Good. Let's follow him until we reach a less populated area." Jazelle grinned evilly, as she knew that she would most likely enjoy what would happen after they had him where they want. They kept track of Tsukishima's Reiatsu and followed it while staying out of his sight for another 20 minutes. They soon found themselves at the entrance of an abandoned building, and Ichigo deduced that either they were somehow caught tailing him, or he had some kind of business here. Ichigo kept his guard up and walked into the building, which was completely empty. It didn't take long until they arrived at the 7th floor, which was the last one. Ichigo immediately gathered the reishi under his feet and used Floodbuild Script to move a few steps away as Tsukishima slashed the space he was in a second ago. "So you two weren't normal humans, and I know what you used. Was it Harenkyaku? Just who the hell are you, and why are you following me?" Tsukishima asked while tilting his sword. Ichigo wondered about how he knew about the technique, since he didn't think that Urya ever explained anything about Harenkyaku to him. But it wasn't that important right now, as he had Tsukishima right where he wanted. Ichigo disappeared with a buzzing sound, causing Tsukishima to step back in alarm, only to stumble into Ichigo, who appeared right behind him via Sonido. "You aren't the one who is supposed to be asking questions, you know. Not that I'm going to ask you any questions in the first place." Tsukishima's eyes widened in alarm as he recognized the technique as an Arrancar's Sonido, and also the familiarity of the voice. He tried to move, only to find out that his arms and legs were already bound tightly with metal chains. Reishi manipulation really is a godsend, you know. Urya probably never knew that it could be used like this, since I heard that the Ishidas were firm supporters of Quincy traditions. Kurisaki Ichigo. Tsukishima gritted his teeth, as he had never expected to see him out of all people again. "Oh, you actually remember my name. That's a shame, since I would have just killed you and be done with it, if you didn't. But you do remember." Ichigo punched Tsukishima's stomach and brought him down to his knees. It took a lot of effort on his part to keep his blood from becoming active on its own, as he might just kill him accidentally if he used his blood artery on Tsukishima. "So, you really did come to take your revenge. Too bad for you that Ginjo isn't here. That sucks, right? Ichigo chuckled at Tsukishima's mention of Ginjo. Did he really think that he was doing this because they stole his powers? No, Tsukishima, it's rather too bad for you that Ginjo isn't here to share your upcoming painful experience. At least Ginjo is going to be executed, which would be a much less painful death compared to what you'll get. I promised to make your death extremely painful, didn't I? And I'm doing this because of what you did to me with your Fullbring, Tsukishima. You dug your grave, and I'm going to help you lie in it. It really is quite nice of me, wouldn't you agree? Tsukishima spitted at Ichigo as a show of defiance. It really was too bad for him that Ichigo easily avoided being hit by it. Well, it's not like you can make what you're going to experience any more painful. Although I should thank you for letting me find the place where I really belong. I wouldn't have met Jazelle on friendly terms if it wasn't for you, so I think I can thank you for that. Ichigo said in a mocking manner. Ah, maybe I should thank you too for giving me the chance to have Ichi-chan all to myself. Ichi-chan, can I make him one of my collection to show my gratitude for him? Jazelle giggled at the thought, and looked at Ichigo expectantly. I suppose I could give him to you when I'm done. Ichigo replied with a smirk. Thank you, Ichi-chan. You two are crazy, Tsukishima muttered, only to be answered by Ichigo's laughter. Well, guess what? You made me like this. Shouldn't you be so proud? About the fact that your Fullbring actually succeeded in breaking the poor naive idiot that night, I wanted to kill you so badly, for what you did to my family. But after a few days, I wanted to kill you, because you were the one who made me suffer through that week of torture. When I learned about all the shit in my life that I didn't even know about until barely a week ago, I knew that I could never go back to what I once was if I get my hands on you. And you know what? I'm all for it. Ichigo brought up a finger and placed it right in front of Tsukishima's forehead. Tsukishima wasn't all that worried about what Ichigo could do to him at first. Seriously, as if a kid like him could torture him or something like that. His thoughts disappeared instantly as a red flame-like orb formed in front of Ichigo's finger. Do you know what this is, Tsukishima? Ichigo asked with a gleeful expression evident even on his hooded face. A Sero. You got that right, Tsukishima. Did you know that the most painful experience someone could go through is being burned to death alive? Tsukishima's mind shut down instantly as Ichigo's Sero came into contact with his skin, and let out a blood-curdling scream which instantly caused goosebumps all over Jazelle's arms. She stared at Ichigo intensely, almost getting aroused at the sight of the more dangerous side of Ichigo. It wouldn't be as much as painful compared to the real experience of being burned to death, since I know how it feels like when you get hit by a Sero. But it's the closest thing you could get without dying for real. Does it make you wonder if getting burned to death could be actually more painful than this? And besides, my insides burned like this when my own sisters turned their back on me because of you. They were everything to me. Ichigo lifted his hand from Tsukishima in all of a sudden, and shot 3 arrows as soon as his blue Hylic Bogan formed in his hands. The form of a masked Onmitsukita agent slumped down from one of the windows, surprisingly not injured in the slightest. He won't remember anything that happened in the span of about 5 minutes' time, and sleep through the whole night. Jazelle's eyes sparkled with mirth at Ichigo's words, as all the possibilities of his Schrift passed through her head. Ichigo stared at the Shinigami's vulnerable form, and thought that killing someone seemed surprisingly easy. He could have chosen to shoot a Hylic file that could easily pierce the man's body, or even completely destroy it by using his hollow Hylic Bogan. Not that he would have done it and revealed the existence of another Quincy other than Urya and take the risk of potentially alerting the head captain of His Majesty's survival. But he was now certain that he wouldn't hesitate when the time comes. Was he really that hateful of the Shinigami, or was it something else? Shit, I shouldn't have used a Sero in an area where a whole squad of Onmitsukita is on their guard. I guess I got a little carried away when I saw him. Let's go, Gigi. We're leaving now. Ichigo scratched his head in annoyance at himself. He should have kept his cool, but it really wasn't easy when he had the very person he hated the most in the world right in front of him. Tsukishima's eyes glimmered with hope at Ichigo's words, only to be crushed a few seconds later. Oh, please, don't get your hopes up, Tsukishima. You're obviously going with us. Did you expect me to just leave you here? Please, I really doubt that you'd be that naive. A word like naive exists for me from 2 weeks ago, who actually thought that you would listen to my plea if I just threw away my pride. Ichigo mocked Tsukishima, signaling Gigi to wait for a second. Gigi, I think should go out and take out the other Onmitsukita agents lest they get suspicious, and alert the Soul Society. Keep an eye on him for me, okay? Ichigo said while tracking down the Reiatsu of the Shinigami near the vicinity. They wouldn't find what he did to one of their own as something unworthy of reporting, after all. Of course, Ichi-chan. Can I have some fun with him while I wait? Jazelle asked, her dopey smile giving Tsukishima the creeps. Sure, why not? Just remember to heal him. Oh, there isn't a body you can use. I guess you should keep it down a bit until we return. And don't let your guard down. Ichigo replied, and planted a chaste kiss firmly on her lips. Fine, I will. Jazelle mock pouted for a second, and leaned in to steal another kiss. Feel free to take your time, Ichi-chan. Ichigo chuckled and whispered to Tsukishima before leaving with another buzz of sound to hunt down the other Onmitsukita agents before they take their leave. I don't like to think about what she can do in a situation like this, 'cause it bothers me a lot, even if I care about her deeply. You have a long day ahead of you, not that we'll just let you die that early. Tsukishima's eyes shook at his words, unsure of what this seemingly harmless girl could do to him that would bother even Ichigo. Suddenly, he thought that Jazelle's smile seemed a hell lot more scary than before. I'm not a sadistic person. Or that's what I usually say, when I hurt my zombies for fun. Since I can't use the soldats anymore, you'll have to do. Just keep it down a little please. It wouldn't be nice for us to wake up the whole neighborhood. Jazelle's eyes widened as she spoke each word, and her dopey smile turned into a grin that gave her a crazed look. Jazelle fished out a metal box from her pocket, which held something that actually freaked him out. No, don't you dare. I'll kill you if you bring it anywhere near my body. Kurisaki isn't here anymore, so don't test me. Oh, and how are you going to kill me? Just so you know. I can easily make you one of my collections, just by giving you some of my blood. I don't need Ichi-chan to protect myself, not that I don't want him to. And besides, you are no match for me. Did you think that you're so special because of your Fulbring? Any competent Shinigami lieutenant would be able to kill you easily, and I'm above that level. Jazelle pulled out a long needle from her box, which was filled with the same thing. You can't even break Ichi-chan's chains. Well, I guess comparing your strength to him would be a joke which isn't even funny. Although it wouldn't hurt to add some more to keep you from squirming. Jazelle formed a few more chains of her own, and bound Tsukishima tightly, effectively stopping him from moving too much to ruin her fun. Despite being weaker than Ichigo's chains, it was more than enough to do its job. Now, let's begin with the fun. Jazelle giggled and gave a long cut to his arm, dragging the tip of her needle down his skin. Tsukishima bit his lips as he felt the blood trickling down his arm. When she reached his hand, she stabbed the needle right under his thumbnail, and almost wet herself while hearing Tsukishima's scream of agony. It was said that the people who lived near the area couldn't sleep well for days, the pained screams of Tsukishima haunting them throughout the following nights. Well, it seems like Gigi is having her time. Although I really don't mind if the person she's doing that to is Tsukishima. Ichigo mused to himself as he could hear Tsukishima's screaming from the distance, albeit faintly. He really had it coming after all. Ichigo used Sonito to his last target, the other 9 Onmitsukita agents including the first already taken care of. It was a fairly easy task, which wasn't something he expected from the members of the stealth force. They weren't all that good at concealing their presence, although he had to give credit to his spiritual awareness that came from awakening his Quincy blood, which was way higher than the time when he had only his Shinigami and hollow powers. As Ichigo slashed his reishi sword through his target, he felt the presence of a captain-level Shinigami right behind his back, a wakizashi-like Zanpakuta held at his neck. Ichigo sighed at his misfortune, as it wasn't all that surprising that the captain of the 2nd Division slipped through their information. Even his heightened spiritual awareness wasn't enough to detect the commander-in-chief of the Onmitsukita, and he had only felt her presence at the last moment. It would have been enough to avoid an attack meant to harm him, but he didn't really bother as her intentions were as clear as day. She wanted to question him alive, and for that she would need to subdue him. It seemed that his decision to form his reishi sword to resemble Bambietta's rather than his data was a good decision after all. Stay still, as you are at my mercy. One wrong move and you'll find your head in front of your feet. What is your purpose of hunting down my men in the world of the living, Arrancar? I'll let you know, that if you dare to lie, I'll just kill you and be done with. Ichigo wanted to scoff at the captain's words as he knew that she wanted to take him in, preferably alive for the real interrogation, and not this child's play. Was she underestimating him because of the fact that she couldn't sense his reiatsu due to the cloak? Ichigo disappeared without a word, Soi Fon's Zanpakuta slashing through the empty space in a matter of milliseconds. Her reflexes were quite impressive, he noted to himself. Ichigo stood across the captain, still having his hood on, which thankfully kept his identity from being revealed. You could have just asked, instead of threatening me. It's not like your Zanpakuta could have cut through my hiero in your restrained state after all. Ichigo smirked, as he started to take off his hood. Soi Fon's steely expression turned into a one of shock at his knowledge of the Gente Rei-en, although it couldn't compare to the one she had on her face when she saw what was under the hood. You aren't an Arrancar. A Vasto Lord. There's no need to get all worked up when I'm not going to kill you today, you know. Oh, and don't even bother to release your seal. It's not like you'll be a match for me with or without your seal, and you'll just die by my hands before your seal is lifted completely. Ichigo said to Soi Fon in his distorted voice, who knew that the hollow was merely stating the truth of the situation. The massive reiatsu that started pressuring the whole area upon the hollow's removal of his hood basically told her to keep her calm if she wanted to leave this situation alive. If you aren't going to kill me, why did you kill my agents? I can't sense any of their reiatsu. Just what did you do to them? Soi Fon gritted her teeth at the overwhelming reiatsu that forced her to behave. She alone won't be able to stop him in this sealed state, and she had no way to request the release of her seal, much less releasing it on her own. There's no need to worry. Your seal is already released, Captain Soi Fon. We heard everything you said, Hollow. The 12th Division isn't a group of idiots that are stupid enough to not prepare fail-safes for a situation like this. Captain, do you require us to send reinforcements? No, I have the situation in my hands. Sting all enemies to death, Suzumaki. Soi Fon's eyes sent a murderous glare to the hollow as she released her shikai. The hollow would regret not killing her when he had the chance. Ichigo let out a sigh at the situation that fell into his hands. At least both his identity and affiliation weren't revealed today. And Jazelle would have ceased to have her fun, and concealed her reiatsu as soon as he brought out his hollow form. Should I just eliminate her before the war even starts? But what would happen if I actually did? Would the Soul Society become truly weakened as the result, or more prepared for the future threats? One less captain-level Shinigami is a great advantage to us. And Yoruichi would probably never forgive me if I did, huh? Ichigo stifled a chuckle at the thought, as it was rather hard to think of her as an enemy. Cats were hard to hate after all. Should I just fake my death and make her forget about this whole situation? No, it would be a waste of an opportunity and probably hard to pull. As Ichigo weighed his options, he came to a simple conclusion. Subdue and capture her, but make it look like she got Kia to the Soul Society. If they were listening into our conversation, I could use this as an advantage on my part. If only I could find out what they're using to communicate with each other, I might be able to pull this off. I wasn't really expecting something like this when I decided to take a stroll out here. It's not like I need to eat human souls to keep my existence, you know. I'm actually curious to how your friends seem to be listening to our friendly chat. Ichigo started to act, thankful for the first time at his mosque's feature of distorting his voice. His voice really was a giveaway, and could be easily recognized by someone like Soi Fon. What kind of hollow you are isn't the matter of importance, hollow. You harmed my subordinates, and I fully intend to make you pay for it. And did you really expect me to answer that question? Soi Fon disappeared with a step of shunpo, only to be surprised when Ichigo caught her wrist, preventing her from stabbing her Zanpakuta to his body. It's not like I really did anything harmful to them. I just put them to a short sleep, that's all. And Ichigo pulled Soi Fon's arm, and whispered in a menacing tone, not that he needed to make it sound menacing when he had his mask on. Didn't I tell you that your seal wouldn't matter to me? As I said, you're no match for me with or without your seal. Ichigo blinked his eyes at the captain's haori held in his hands, the captain herself nowhere to be seen. He remembered this technique, probably from Yoruichi, he thought to himself. Way of Onmitsu, third of the Shia. Yutsusemi. Soi Fon whispered from behind, stabbing her Zanpakuta at Ichigo's back, only to notice that he was also gone when she thought that her attack succeeded in leaving a Hamonka. It was really nice of you to give me a present like this. Should I wear it with pride? Ichigo mocked the captain as he appeared once more, right in front of her. Soi Fon gritted her teeth, and took another stab at him, only to be surprised herself when Ichigo actually received a hit. A Hamonka appeared right above where Ichigo's heart was located. You don't really have to be so feisty, you know. That hardly stung a little anyway. Are you sure that your Zanpakuta could actually sting your enemy to death with this? Ichigo riled up the captain a little more to his liking, only to be interrupted with the sound of a Senkaimon. He cursed to himself as he sensed a familiar Reiatsu exiting it. Well, hello there Captain Soi Fon. You seem to be having a bad day. And you, Hollow. The blonde-haired captain's eyes widened in disbelief as he felt the familiar Reiatsu that came from the Vasco Lord. What the hell? Shinji gasped as Ichigo's reishi sword pierced his stomach, losing his consciousness immediately. We'll be seeing each other again, Shinji. Sorry for doing this to you. Ichigo sighed as he felt Soi Fon's Zanpakuta making contact with the Hamonka he had received barely a minute ago. This is the end for you, Hollow. You see, my Zanpakuta Suzumbaki's ability is the perfect Zanpakuta for an assassin like me. Naijeki Kesatsu. Once you receive 2 strikes at the same spot, your life is forfeit. It seems that you were all words. Soi Fon gasped as she felt a short trench knife leaving a shallow cut across her chest. It wasn't the pain that bothered her, but an unusual feeling that she couldn't get a grasp of. Your Zanpakuta-'s ability is indeed fearsome. But I'm not the type to die all alone, Shinigami. If I am going to die, you're going to accompany me to my deathbed. Ichigo smirked as he fired out a Sero at the sky with one hand, while he reached his other hand and fished out the Denreishinki that was strapped to her obi sash. Ichigo let out a sigh after he crushed it, his mask disintegrating into reishi. He then checked Shinji's unconscious form, only to be surprised that he had somehow stabbed through Shinji's Denreishinki when he made Shinji forget about everything that happened after he exited the Senkaimon. It was a lucky hit on his part. But why did he have a bad feeling? Jugram did say that if you experience good luck, it will be evened out with an equal amount of misfortune. You, Kurisaki Ichigo, how did you survive? Soi Fon muttered in surprise and annoyance as she realized that her Naijeki Kesatsu has failed. Oh. I guess it shouldn't be all that surprising that the first thing you'd ask is about how your Zanpakuta-'s ability failed. I simply made my body forget the fact that it received the first hit, effectively making your second strike as the first instead. It's such a good thing that I read about all the current captains listed in the Daiden, since I already thought up a counter for your Zanpakuta. I was a little surprised when they sent reinforcement even when you told them that you didn't need it. And it just happened to be Shinji who recognized the Reiatsu of my hollow. Ichigo sighed once more at the close call. It was only thanks to Shinji being too shocked by his presence that he was able to take care of him before the situation got out of hand. You recovered your powers, on your own. Well, that would be both yes and no, but enough with the questions. You're coming with me, whether you like it or not. Just know that I'm only sparing you because I owe Yoruichi that much. Ichigo formed the same chains he used on Tsukishima, and took the bound form of Soi Fon over his shoulder, who was surprised that she was saved by Lady Yoruichi once more, whether she was aware of it or not. I most certainly wasn't expecting this when I came here, but I guess everything turned out for the best. If what I did to you works properly, you can come out now, Gigi. Let's go home before something unexpected happens again. Sure thing, Ichi-chan. I can already see Jugo's expression getting all messed up when you show up with a captain as a captive. Jazelle giggled and took Ichigo's hand into hers while preparing the shadows for them, only to be interrupted by the second captive's panicked voice. I cancelled my Fullbring as you wanted, Kurisaki. At least kill me without the torture, with her. Please. I beg of you. Ichigo froze at Tsukishima's words, and sighed in annoyance as not everything turned out for the best. He really shouldn't tempt the fates by saying words like that in the future. Tsukishima, you're going to become her toy she can use whenever she wants for what you just did. Whoever said I wanted you to cancel your Fullbring? I suppose I should do a favor for Gigi. Ichigo let go of Jazelle's hand, which made her want to pout, but his mention of a favor for her stopped her from doing so. Ichigo formed his trench knife-like reishi sword once more and stabbed Tsukishima, resulting in him to forget about the thought of killing himself no matter how much pain his future held. He doesn't know what the word death means anymore. I thought it would be a good present for you. Jazelle let out a squeal and hugged Ichigo, and the two Quincy's with their two respective captives soon disappeared from the city without a trace. Throne Room, Silburn. It was the next day when Yhwach found Ichigo kneeling on one knee in front of him. He was greatly satisfied at his newest Sternritter, who actually put his loyalty to the Empire above his past ties, including his family. He understood that the act itself was intended to keep them out of the upcoming conflict, but it was a commendable act nevertheless. Your Majesty, I have come to report the events that occurred last night. Sternritter Gewel and I tracked down our target under an hour's time, but a mistake on my part revealed our presence to the Onmitsukita squad in the vicinity. The target is held in Sternritter Gewel's quarters. It did not take long to take them all down and remove their memories of the night, but there was an unexpected event that occurred. The captain of the 2nd Division happened to be there last night for unknown reasons, and is currently held captive in my quarters. There was also the captain of the 5th Division who was sent as a reinforcement, but I took care of him by surprise before he could prove to be a problem. The Soul Society does not know about the existence of the Empire, as I took the measures to stage the whole situation under the guise of a rogue Vasto Lord Hollow to make it look like the captain was Kia by the Vasto Lord. I have also ordered the soldats on surveillance duty to keep their attention focused on the 12th Division and the 1st Division barracks. That would be all, Your Majesty. As Ichigo concluded the report, Yhwach couldn't help but admire his Sternritter's performance. It seemed that the decision to send Sternritter, Z, to recruit Ichigo was the best war preparation done on their part. I see. Is there a reason the said captain is held captive in your quarters? You could have easily killed her, if you staged the events as you informed. About the matter, I personally wish to keep her alive as my captive for the time being, as it concerns the debt I owe to her master, Shia in Yoruichi. For safety measures, her loyalty to the Gote 13 has been removed. May I ask for your permission, Your Majesty? Yhwach considered his options, and decided that it wouldn't be a problem for him to approve of it. If I deny your request and order you to kill her immediately? Yhwach asked, knowing full well the answer that was to come. I am yours to command, Your Majesty. Ichigo said, played along the Emperor's game, as he knew that his request was already approved. Your request is granted, Sternritter Kurisaki. I see great promise in you, and expect more from the future. You are dismissed. Ichigo bowed his head in gratitude and exited the throne room. Yhwach laughed, as he could see the expression on Yamamoto's face when this event was revealed at their inevitable confrontation. Chapter 6. Interlude. Kurisaki Clinic. June 1st. Karen. Yuzu. Isshin was unsure of what to think of the uncomfortable silence in the house, as it wasn't like his daughters to be absent for breakfast. Yuzu usually prepared the meal for everyone, so it really wasn't natural for them to be missing at this time. It was then that Isshin heard the faint sobbing sound of his daughter, which was most likely Yuzu. Yuzu, what's wrong? Isshin ran up the stairs, only to find the door of Ichigo's room to be open. He really wasn't expecting them to be here, out of all places. Yuzu. As Isshin saw the sobbing form of Yuzu in the arms of Karen, who was silently shedding tears unlike her twin, he knew that they were finally free from what the Fullbringer had done to them. It also meant that it was the time for his inevitable confrontation with his daughters, which was something he had been dreading ever since Ichigo disappeared from Karakura town. Goat-shin, where is Ichi-ni? Isshin almost choked at Karen's question. How could he tell his daughter that he had no idea on where Ichigo was at the moment? Alas, it was his own undoing, and no one was going to do this for him in his place. Ichigo is gone, Karen. We don't know where he is. I'm sorry, it's all my fault. Ishin never felt this disappointed in himself, until he saw the blame evident in Karen's eyes when he told her that Ichigo was gone, and he knew very well that he deserved it. The Kurisaki family once revolved around Masaki, and then Ichigo after her death. Yuzu tried to fill her place by doing the housework, while Karen decided to become stronger for the family. How would they change, now that Ichigo was gone? Bring him back, Go-chin. We have to apologize. I remember the look Ichi-ni had on his face the day he left. I remember what I said to him. He's going to hate me now. How could I do something like that to Ichi-ni? I want to see him again. Karen broke down into a sobbing mess as she remembered all the harsh words she said to her dear brother. She didn't yearn for her brother's love as much as Yuzu did, but he still was the most important person to her other than Yuzu. If Yuzu was someone she wanted to protect, Ichigo was the fence that protected them both. Their family would never be the same again without their beloved Ichi-ni. Ishin almost panicked at the sight of his daughters crying their eyes out, as he had never imagined Karen out of the two to ever cry like this. He knelt down in front of the girls and pulled them into his arms. It wasn't your fault, Karen. You two weren't in your right minds. Ichigo could never hate you two, and you know it too. Calm down a little, okay? We never had a cousin, right? I don't remember you or mom showing us any cousins. Then just who is this Tsukishima person? Why did I think of him as my cousin? He's everywhere in my memories, but I know that he couldn't have possibly been there. It's the same with Yuzu. What is wrong with us, Go-chin? Karen almost begged to Ishin, while Yuzu was just whimpering in Karen's arms. It's a long story. I'll tell you two about it when you calm down a little, please. Ishin cringed at the thought of what was to come, but it was his duty to explain everything to his girls. It took almost 5 minutes for Karen to cease her sobbing, unable to stop the occasional sniffs and tears. It took another 10 minutes for Yuzu, who didn't say a word even then. I suppose I'll have to explain from the beginning. The girls listened to Ishin's story of how Ichigo got involved with a group of people who called themselves Fullbringers, and decided to regain his powers after his friends were attacked. How the Soul Society wanted to use Ichigo as a bait to bring a criminal out into the open, and how he himself just watched everything from the sidelines. Yuzu gasped and started to tear up once more at this part. When they heard about how Tsukishima toyed with their memories and Ishin didn't stop him, Karen glared murderously at Ishin while Yuzu just hugged Karen tightly to find comfort. Ishin soon finished his story with how Ichigo lost his powers once more, and left about a week after that due to how all of his friends and they shunned him. Ishin braced himself as Yuzu burst into another fit of sobs while Karen got up and yelled at Ishin. How could you do that to Ichi-ni? I can't believe you. You aren't my dad until Ichi-ni actually forgives you for what you did to him. You actually put the Soul Society above your own children. Mom would have never let something like that to happen. Karen seethed in rage, while Ishin could only gawk at his daughter's rage. Poor Ichi-ni. I'm sorry, Yuzu muttered. Ishin looked down in shame at his daughter's words, while a black cat leapt away from the window, muttering, "Idiot," under her breath. She had absolutely no idea of what she would have to hear that day. The barracks of the 1st Division, Captain's Meeting, June 1st. So, just in case I got it all wrong, you're basically saying that you were taken down by the Hollow as soon as you exited the Senkaimon, Captain Hirako. Seriously? Ta-Shira asked in disbelief. Yeah, but, Shinji tried to say what was bothering him since he woke up, when he was cut off by Mayuri. His Denreishinki was destroyed as soon as he arrived at the world of the living, and from what I could tell by my subordinates' reports, Captain Soi Fon took this to her advantage. She succeeded on landing a second blow with her released Zanpakuta on the Hollow, who retaliated with a Sero as a last attempt to take down Captain Soi Fon with it. Both the Hollow and Captain Soi Fon's Reiatsu disappeared shortly after the Hollow released a Sero. In simple words, Captain Soi Fon was killed by the Vasto Lord after she successfully landed a killing blow. Is there any more to say about the matter? Shinji tried to explain how he had no memories of after he exited the Senkaimon, which was strange in his opinion, but was interrupted once more, this time by Kenpachi. Your lackeys should have just sent me instead of him. It's not like I was busy at that time. The Hollow would have put up a good enough fight if it beat 2 captains that easily. My body's itching for a good fight ever since Ichigo became powerless. Shinji gave up at that point. It's not like the fact that he had absolutely no memories from the moment he stepped out of the Senkaimon was all that important. Well, it was important, but the other captains obviously didn't want to know about it if they kept interrupting him. A Captain Kia by a mere hollow, and there wasn't even a sample left of it at the site. How useless, Mayuri muttered, earning another glare from the captains, which didn't go unnoticed by Shinji. He most certainly was going to get some answers from one of the captains today. He had failed in finding out anything from the senior captains, so he would have to try his luck with the younger ones. The question was who would be more likely to give him the answers he want, the kid or the noble. I'll just ask them both if the other refuses. I hope Momo won't get mad if I end up skipping today's paperwork. He really was trying hard to get on friendly terms with his lieutenant, another victim of Aizen's deceptions. It's not like you would have fared any better against a Vasto Lord, Captain Kuritsuchi. Your disrespectful behavior towards the deceased captain is extremely disconcerting. Urahara Kazuki should have left you to rot in the maggot's nest, the place where you truly belong. Komamura growled, disgust evident in his voice. They weren't on the best terms ever since the meeting that occurred after Aizen's defeat. This coming from a beast like you. Silence. Yamamoto slammed his staff, the temperature rising as the head captain showed his rage at the display of friction between the captains. Captain Mayuri, you shall show proper respect towards the captain who fulfilled her duty to the moment of her death. I will not condone such behavior anymore. Do I make myself clear? Yes, head captain, Mayuri replied with distaste evident in his voice. We do not have any viable candidates for the position of the now empty captaincy, more so if it is the second divisions. Captain Kuchiki, you are to seek out Shia in Yoruichi in the world of the living to inform her of Captain Soi Fon-ji's unfortunate demise, and my orders for her to return and take up her duties as the commander-in-chief of the Onmitsukita and the captain of the 2nd Division once more. We cannot afford to leave a seat of such importance absent. Byakuya's eyes widened at the head captain's orders. Head captain, I highly doubt that she would return on her own will to take up the captaincy again. Shinji stated, completely flabbergasted at the head captain's orders. Why did I ever return to take back my place as the captain of the 5th Division again? Oh, right, I accepted to clean up the mess Aizen made of my old squad as did Rose and Kensai. Should have known better and followed Hiyori's example. It's obvious that Yoruichi's gonna throw a fit when she hears of this without a doubt. Poor Byakuya. She has no choice on the matter. She was exiled on false accusations along with Urahara Kazuki, which was given a full pardon. It is only natural for her to return and take up her duties once more. As for you, Captain Kuritsuchi, step out of line again, and you'll find yourself replaced with Urahara Kazuki. This meeting is closed. Yamamoto turned his back on the captains, signaling that the meeting has come to an end. The captains didn't utter a word as they left, not wanting to stir up the hornet's nest that was the head captain. Mayuri looked absolutely livid at the mentioning of the name Urahara Kazuki, but didn't dare to show any kind of disrespect toward the head captain. Shinji had to wonder if the head captain would have forced him to take up his old position again if he refused the offer he was given at the time, as he knew that Yoruichi had no choice but to accept. She was a member of the Shia-in clan, and knew what the consequences would be if she were to refuse. Then again, his captaincy wasn't as important as the 2nd Division since it was a position directly connected to the Onmitsukita. Shinji sighed, and quickly caught up with Byakuya before he left to the world of the living to carry out his orders. He could always ask Tashira after this. Captain Kuchiki, a word if you would. Byakuya looked at him in confusion at first, but nodded a moment later. Do you happen to know the reason of the other captain's animosity towards Kuritsuchi, including yourself? It seems that the reinstated captains are missing something, which is obviously something important. The other captains refused to give me an answer, you see. Captain Hirako, I'm sorry to disappoint, but I am not allowed to disclose that information. None of the captains are, by the orders of the Central 46. Byakuya replied, grimacing at the information he had the misfortune of learning. Ever since Rukia's rescue from execution at the hands of Kurisaki Ichigo, he always felt somewhat in debt to him. He didn't approve of what his lieutenant did 8 years ago, but he was honestly disgusted at what the 12th Division did to Ichigo's mother. I suppose that the idiots of the Central 46 still holds that much power after everything they did, huh? Thanks for your answer, Captain Kuchiki. Also, I bid you good luck in confronting Yoruichi. You'll need it. Shinji waved his hand at Byakuya and disappeared via Shunpo. Byakuya agreed that he will need some luck if he wanted to come out of this in one piece. Ichigo's personal quarters, Silburn, June 9th. I brought you some dumplings, Soi Fon. You really shouldn't skip lunch. Also a little bit of information you might be interested in. Ichigo said, placing the plate of dumplings on the table Soi Fon was occupying. Thank you. What is this information about? Soi Fon asked while picking up a dumpling from the plate, her eyes still fixated on the book she borrowed from Menina's. It was somewhat surprising to him that she actually enjoyed Menina's romance novels, but everyone had their own tastes in literature. He wasn't one to judge really, since he had read the same book and found it entertaining enough. It's about your beloved Lady Yoruichi. Soi Fon's head snapped up as soon as he mentioned the very name of her master, not even caring about Ichigo's teasing. It seems that she was reinstated as the 2nd Division captain, along with the position of the commander-in-chief of the Onmitsukita, against her will if the bout she had with Yamamoto was any indication. Soi Fon quickly swallowed the dumpling, almost choking in the process. Oh, I suppose there wasn't anyone that would fit into the position, since my lieutenant was a joke if I'm being honest about it. Ichigo understood where she was coming from, as one of the lieutenants he took down with his bare hands during Rukia's execution just happened to be her lieutenant. Lady Yoruichi would have had to accept it for the sake of her clan, mostly for her brother Yashira. Soi Fon seemed to be deep in thought, so Ichigo sat across her and played with his Quincy cross. It really was amusing to him, that how much of a pleasant person Soi Fon actually proved to be when he made her forget her loyalty to the Gote 13. It probably had something to do with the fact that she was still alive here as the result of his debt to Yoruichi. They had the common ground of the experience of learning from the same person. Ichigo vowed to himself to never reveal how Yoruichi teased him with her naked body to Soi Fon, as it was obvious to him that she held a romantic interest towards her Lady Yoruichi. I've decided, you are going to train in the arts of Hakuda with me. I'm going to show her how much I improved when we meet again, even if it has to be on the battlefield. Come, Ichigo. Soi Fon stood up and walked towards the door, which gave Ichigo no choice but to get up and take her to one of the training grounds. Most of the Sternritter didn't welcome her presence even as a captive, and it wouldn't do him any good to let her roam around Silburn freely. You do realize that you are still my captive, right? Ichigo asked while sweat dropping. Soi Fon merely raised her eyebrows in response, causing him to sigh in resignation. At least let me tell Gigi where I'm going first. She might become jealous if I don't. Oh, should I teach her that I'm not into men, the hard way? Soi Fon gave Ichigo a sly grin, causing his face to lit up as images of naked Jazelle with Soi Fon invaded his mind. No, it won't be necessary. Gods, I should have expected that from someone who learned from Yoruichi. Soi Fon let out a haughty laugh at Ichigo's uncomfortable expression. She could understand why Lady Yoruichi told her to tease the orange-haired teen when she gets the chance to do so, as it was much more amusing than she imagined it to be. Bambietta's personal quarters, Silburn, June 17th. It wasn't a big secret to the Sternritter that their Sternritter, was becoming more gloomy and moody as this particular date came closer. The Sternritter girls were worried about Ichigo, even though Menina's and Candace were a tad bit uncomfortable near Ichigo and Jazelle. They knew that those two were keeping their physical interactions down to minimum near them, but still. You know, Gigi, you should just take him to see his mom's grave. Menina suggested to Jazelle out of concern about Ichigo. She would have wanted nothing more but to accompany him, but she respected Ichigo's decision regarding Jazelle. Do you think Jugram or His Majesty would approve? Karakura is kind of a dangerous area for us to approach, considering how Ichigo's family would have regained their memories. There really is a high chance of compromising ourselves. Jazelle answered in a resigned tone, obviously wanting to follow her advice. Well, I'm sure they can make an exception if it's for their favorite Sternritter. I mean, Almost every Sternritter likes or respects him for his personality or power. There's even some rumors running around the soldats about how it's only a matter of time before Ichigo is named His Majesty's successor. Menina's shrugged as she gave her answer to Jazelle. If she were to be honest about it, she was pretty much expecting the Emperor to name Ichigo as his successor before the war starts. You know what? I'll go see Jugo first. It would be an insult to him if I don't ask his permission for something like this. Oh, you're the best friend I could ever hope for, Meni. Jazelle hugged Menina's, which made her to smile softly at the younger girl. By the way, Meni. Jazelle gave Menina's her usual dopey smile as she leaned in closer to her ear. I approve. Just remember that I'm Ichigo's first and we won't have any problems, and same goes to Candy. Nothing more than kissing until I say so. And tell Candy that I'm sorry about how I was being mean to her, would you? Gigi. What? Menina's could only stare in shock as the form of Jazelle disappeared through the door. Did she just give them an okay sign to go for Ichigo? For real? Candy. Yeah, Meni. Candace looked up from her hand mirror. Is it April Fool's Day? Because Gigi just gave us her permission to date Ichigo. Menina's muttered, confusion evident from her voice. Candace actually dropped her mirror at Menina's words, blinking in surprise. Was she actually being serious? And she also said that she's sorry for being mean to you. You know, I think I kinda understand why she was so antagonistic to you now. Menina's gave Candace a knowing smile, which made her eyes to widen. No way, you mean to say that she was jealous of me? That's actually a little cute. Candace giggled at the thought. So, she's letting us share Ichigo with her, because she feels confident in herself, now that he chose her over us. Am I getting this right? Candace asked with a small frown. Menina's nodded in response at that. Gigi was probably insecure about herself, Candy. So I think she got over her insecurities when Ichigo chose to date her instead of us. I guess that makes sense. You know, I always thought that I did something wrong to Gigi without knowing. And she was just jealous of my looks all along. Candace started to giggle again. Well, if it makes you all that happy. I feel jealous of you too, from time to time. Menina said in a joking manner, even though she herself knew that it was probably the truth. Sure you do. I always knew it, Meni. Candace replied, obviously waving it off as a joke. I suppose we should be thankful to Gigi, since Ichigo really isn't the type to treat us any less just because we aren't his first. And if you think about how sweet he is to Gigi. Candace let out an uncharacteristic squeal, causing Menina's to blink in surprise at her giddy behavior. I'm not even sure if you're the real Candace anymore. Menina's deadpanned. Face it, girl, you're just as excited as me, and stop trying to hide it. All of us knows about how you even dream of your darling at night. Candace teased Menina's, which made her blush madly. Fine, I almost fainted when Gigi told me to go for him. Happy now. Candace gave Menina's a Cheshire grin at her admission. Totally. It was then that the owner of the room woke up from her nap. What are you guys talking about? Bambietta asked, a cute yawn escaping her lips. Oh, it's nothing important. Gigi just decided to share Ichigo with us is all. Candace replied casually without batting an eye. Bambietta's expression became a little awkward at the mention of them sharing Ichigo, but she hid it quickly. Not that the other girls didn't notice it. Oh, good for you too. Or good for him. I suppose Ichigo would be overjoyed at the thought of having 3 girls to himself. Anyway, I'm gonna see if anyone is up for a fight. Candace and Menina's shared a knowing look as Bambietta left the room without another word. She has it bad for Ichigo, doesn't she? Menina's asked. Well, who doesn't? Even Berenice admitted that Ichigo is hot, and that's saying something. Candace replied while smoothing out her outfit, not that there really was anything to smooth out as in literally. No way, but she's married. Menina's gasped in surprise at that. Just because she's taken doesn't mean she can't appreciate an eye candy like Ichigo. Candace smirked, and added, I'm going to bet that Bambi's gonna join us after the war starts. If you put it like that, I'll bet on before the war starts. What's the wager? I dunno, maybe the winner becomes the official second. Deal. The 2 girls looked at each other, and broke into a fit of giggles. Line break. Karakura Graveyard, June 17th. Two cloaked figures stood in front of a grave that belonged to Kurisaki Masaki, the sun having set hours ago. It was to avoid any contact with the remaining Kurosakis, a decision made on Ichigo's part. It's not like he didn't want to see his family, but he knew that they were already pushing their luck coming here today. I really don't know how to thank you for doing this for me, Gigi. Ichigo muttered, touched at just how much Jazelle cared about him. Don't bother, Ichi-chan. I'll do anything for you, as long as it's something I can do. Jazelle replied as she tightened her grip on his hand. And I'll do the same for you, Gigi. Here, let me introduce you to my mom. Ichigo pulled Jazelle in front of him, facing his mother's grave. Hey, Mom, this is Jazelle Gewell, my girlfriend. She's a really nice girl. At least to me. Ichigo couldn't help but think about the last part to himself. Well, what really mattered was that they cared about each other deeply, right? You flatter me, Ichi-chan. Jazelle squirmed uncomfortably, as she knew fully well that she really didn't deserve such compliments or even her Ichi-chan, to be honest. She wasn't even sure if his mother would have approved of them if she was still alive. Gigi was the one who saved me when I was dying on the insides, Mom. I don't really know what I would have been doing right now if it wasn't for her, and I think you would have liked her too, if you just got to know her. I learned how you were a Quincy and I decided to follow your footsteps. I really can't believe how Goat-chin hid something like that from me, but I suppose it doesn't really matter now. Ichigo pulled Jazelle into his arms, finding comfort at the familiar scent of hyacinth from his girlfriend's hair. I found out the truth behind your death, and even after that. I'm going to do things that you probably wouldn't approve, Mom. I would have wanted to say that I'm going to do it for you, but I'm not. I can't lie like that. It's me who just can't bear the thought of the ones who let you die or made you suffer still breathing when you aren't. I'm sorry that I couldn't be the proud son you would have wanted me to become. Ichigo almost choked at the thought of his mother being disappointed at him. Shish, your mom would be proud of you no matter what, Ichi-chan. Don't be too harsh on yourself, okay? Ichigo nodded at her soothing words, smiling lovingly at the girl who became the light of his world. I love you, Jazelle Gewell. I really do. Don't you ever forget that. Ichigo whispered to Jazelle as he hugged her more tightly. Love you too, Jazelle said as she snuggled into Ichigo's embrace. After a few minutes of comfortable silence, Ichigo decided to leave for the last business he had in the world of the living. Let's go, Gigi. I'm going to leave a letter for my sisters before we head back. I'm not sure if I'll be able to come back next year, Mom, but I'll make sure to come and see you after the war. Goodbye, Ichigo promised to himself. The couple disappeared from the graveyard, completely unnoticed by anyone. Ichigo's personal quarters, Silburn, June 18th. Ichigo stared at the girls in front of him in disbelief. Was he actually hearing things? Had he gone completely mad, from all the time he spent hanging out with the girls? So let me get this straight. Gigi decided to share me with you two, and you two accepted this. Meninas and Candace nodded at his question without hesitation. Okay, I suppose I shouldn't be surprised with that when you guys were willing to have a relationship with me at the same time in the first place. Gigi, please tell me, why am I the last one to know about this? Soi Fon watched the drama with interest, as did Liltato, while Bambietta was both interested and bothered with the scene at the same time. Well, it was pretty obvious to me that you liked many. And let's be honest, Ichi-chan. You secretly enjoyed Candace flirting and you know it. Hell, I even saw you check out Bambi-chan. Everyone could hear the clattering sound of a chair falling back, as Bambietta stood up hastily at Gigi's accusation. The girl's face was burning in embarrassment, although the other girls in the room noticed that there was a somewhat flattered look beneath it. I'm leaving. Ichigo couldn't help but sigh as Bambietta abruptly left the room. You know, that reaction was surprisingly innocent, if you consider the fact that it came from Bambi-chan. Jazelle said with a giggle, the other girls except Soi Fon following suit. Even so, she did have an amused smirk on her face. Did you really have to say that in front of her, Gigi? And I didn't secretly enjoy Candace flirting back then. Oh, back then. Do you mean to say that you'll enjoy it now? Jazelle teased him as she caught his slip of words. Gah, I get it, Gigi. I do like Many and Candy to the point that I wouldn't be opposed to dating, alright. But are you really sure about this? You were being all jealous when we weren't together, and then you suddenly decide to share with them. You know that I'll treat all of you fairly if that happens, and what that would mean to you. Ichigo asked seriously. Jazelle merely smiled and leaned into him, her lips grazing from the corner of his mouth to his cheeks, and rested at his earlobe. I'm fine with it because I know that you'll be fair not only to them, but also to me. Their happiness matters as much as mine to me, and they really deserve someone like you. As long as you don't cast me aside because I lack in my looks, I want this. And I know you won't do that to me, Ichi-chan. Jazelle whispered to Ichigo, her smile never wavering. Ichigo couldn't help but run his hand down her hair in appreciation, surprised at her thoughts. Your looks don't lack in my eyes, Gigi. I find you cute and alluring at the same time. Don't sell yourself short, because I chose you before this. Okay. Okay. Jazelle couldn't help but nod at his reassuring words. Ichigo turned to the girls who were smiling at the pair of lovebirds. I really have no idea about how this would work out, but I suppose we could give it a try. Oh, you won't regret it, sweetie. I'm not gonna bite as long as you don't mess up my hair. Then again, I don't think I would care that much if it was you. Candace sent Ichigo a sultry look. Surprisingly, Ichigo chuckled in amusement at the comment. I'll keep that in mind. Don't worry, Ichigo, I won't make you carry my shopping bags. Menina's said with a smirk. And why do I get the feeling that I should consider myself extremely lucky? Ichigo deadpanned at that. Because you should. Menina's got up and stood in front of Ichigo, her hands coming up to hold his face. Having 3 beautiful girls all to yourself. Shouldn't you count yourself lucky? I bet at least half the men in the world would envy you. If you put it that way. I guess you're right about that. You know, I've been wondering how it would feel like to kiss you ever since I did it with Gigi. Ichigo murmured, as his tongue came out and licked his lips. Menina smiled softly and replied quickly with anticipation. The thought is mutual, so why don't we find out? And find out, they did. Menina's captured Ichigo's lips with her own, closing her eyes to concentrate on the sensation of kissing him in reality instead of her dreams. She knew that the one she dreamed of couldn't even compare to the real one, as she melted into Ichigo's arms. Her hands touched his cheeks tenderly as she let her tongue tangle with Ichigo's. She never knew that a kiss could feel like this, her toes curling at the pleasure she felt from Ichigo's gentle touch. Ichigo let his hands rest on Menina's waist, holding her close to him out of the thought of not wanting to let her go. Menina's was in pure bliss as Ichigo dominated her mouth, exploring everything within his reach. He noticed that Menina's was way more submissive compared to Jazelle, and pulled away from the kiss. Menina's had a dazed look on her, although it soon changed into a pout as she realized that Ichigo had stopped kissing her. Ichigo really couldn't help but blurt out as he took in her pout. You look really cute when you're pouting. Don't tease me. Menina's blushed at his compliment, and was about to lean in for another kiss when Candace butted in. Don't leave me out, sweetie. You said you'll treat us fairly, remember? Candace purred with a predatory grin, and smashed her lips with Ichigo's, much to Menina's chagrin of being interrupted. I'm just glad that I don't have to keep it down anymore when we're with you guys. Jazelle said with her trademark smile, which made Menina send a grateful look towards her. Thank you, Gigi. I didn't know that you cared about us that much. Jazelle let out a small laugh and replied. I didn't either, so you can thank Ichi-chan for that. Ichigo wasn't all that surprised of how much of a good kisser Candace was, but he was surprised at the unique sensation that came from the kiss. He wondered if this was how it would feel like if he kissed a battery, as he became putty in her hands from the mind-blowing kiss. Ichigo couldn't help but to lean in for more, his head tilting downwards in an attempt to take the reins from her hand. Despite his attempt at taking control, Candace easily dominated him without breaking a sweat. Ichigo knew that she would have had a smirk on her face if her mouth wasn't occupied. Ichigo tried again, and found himself leading the kiss as Candace let go of the reins on her own. Whores, Liltato muttered out of habit, a faint smile on her face. Soi Fon disappeared with a step of Shunpo for a walk, as the image of her and Lady Yoruichi making out filled her head. She needed some well-deserved alone time. Wow, that was electrifying. Ichigo muttered as they broke the kiss, causing Candace to giggle. He raised his hand to lift her chin, and leaned in to taste some more of the green-haired beauty. It really wasn't a surprise to the foursome that they spent the whole day enjoying each other's company. Karakura High, June 20th. Chad and Urya approached Orihime, who had a faraway look while standing on the edge of the school rooftop. All of them were devastated when they found out that Tsukishima had toyed with their memories, and Ichigo had left because of it. Orihime was taking it the worst, if the loss of her cheeriness was any indication of it. It wasn't all that surprising to the others, as Orihime's crush on Ichigo was plain as day to them, while the said person was oblivious to it. We know it hurts, Inoue-san. But you shouldn't be so harsh on yourself. You know that you can't be blamed for what you did to him while being affected by Tsukishima's fulbring. Urya tried to comfort Orihime, which didn't work all that well. If someone were to blame, I was the one who got involved with execution in the first place, so. Chad started, only to be interrupted by Orihime. Sato-kun, don't say something like that. I'm just worried about Kurosaki-kun, is all. He must have been lonely with no one on his side when all of us were being mean to him. And we don't know if Kurosaki-kun left on his own, or if he was abducted by someone. I mean, it's been a whole month. Orihime gasped at this point. Do you think he— Oh no. Urya sighed as Orihime teared up. He himself was worried about Ichigo, even if he didn't admit it out loud. Kurosaki isn't that weak, Inoue-san. I think he was the one who solved the situation. It would explain the reason he disappeared, and how we were all released from the effects of Tsukishima's fulbring at the same time. But that makes me wonder. How? They stole Kurosaki's powers that night. Urya wasn't sure if he was on the right track or not, but he had a feeling that it had to do something with Ichigo. Oh, Ishida-kun, maybe it was Kurosaki-kun's, you know. Urya understood what she was talking about from the way she shivered just at the thought of it. Maybe, but we'll never know for sure until Kurosaki comes back. And I think he will return sooner or later, but if he doesn't, we don't really have a choice but to ask the Soul Society for their help. Urya replied with a small frown. Just because he wasn't against the Soul Society didn't mean he was overly fond of them. Chad looked down at his clenched fist as Urya comforted Orihime. He had promised to always keep Ichigo's back, and failed to uphold his words. He had a gut feeling that everything couldn't go back to how it was, but didn't voice it to his friends. I'm worried about Tatsuki-chan, too. She became depressed ever since we were released from the fulbring, and she won't tell me why. Orihime sighed at the thought. Everyone was feeling the absence of Ichigo, some harder than the others including herself. If Ichigo doesn't return until the next month, we should ask for the Soul Society's help. We can only hope that the police do their job for the time being. Chad spoke as he vowed to never fail his best friend again, if given the chance. Please stay safe, Kurosaki-kun, Orihime thought to herself, as she held her treasured hairpin to her chest. Interrogation Cell, Silburn, July 1st. Ichigo walked into the interrogation cell, which was unoccupied for decades, until it became active recently due to one of their captives. While Soi Fon was of the same status, she was basically under his protection. Tsukishima on the other hand. Hello, Tsukishima, how's life been treating you? Ichigo asked out of courtesy, although its main purpose was to mock his current situation. Kurosaki, just end this torture already. Tsukishima groaned out, the pain being too much for him to retort with a snide comment. Ichigo almost laughed as he noted that Tsukishima still didn't know the word, death. It's not like the other tormentors would have bothered to teach him anyway. Oh, I thought my fellow Sternritter were supposed to treat you well. Were they doing a bad job on keeping your company? Ichigo asked in mock concern, obviously enjoying it. Ichigo didn't really think that torture was something he would enjoy in the long run, nor would have a positive effect on his person. So he had come to the conclusion that he would just leave the job to the other Sternritter. He wasn't sure if they would be up for it at first, but he was proven to be wrong soon enough when Quilge showed up on an almost daily basis. He didn't know if anyone other than Quilge and Jazelle had been visiting the interrogation cell, but he really wasn't eager to know about it. Even Jazelle had stopped visiting after about a week or so, which was something he couldn't help but to ask the reason. Jazelle gave him her usual dopey smile and said, I just decided that it isn't worth my time. I have better things to do, after all. It didn't take a genius to know what she was talking about, if the way she latched onto him after saying that was any indication. Just shut the fuck up, if you aren't going to let me out, Tsukishima said while gritting his teeth. Ichigo had to give some credit to Tsukishima, if he was this lively even after spending so much time with Quilge. What's this? You sure are full of energy today. I can already see that today will be quite the enjoyable day for both of us. Tsukishima froze as he heard the voice of his most frequent visitor, his body responding in reflex at the fear of what is to come. Ichigo easily recognized the voice as Quilge's, and couldn't help but wonder exactly what he did to Tsukishima if he became that afraid just by hearing his voice. Good afternoon, Kurisaki. I really should thank you for bringing him to Silburn, as spending my time in this cell has become my favorite activity as of recently. It saddens me greatly that my time with him is limited, if what I heard from Jazelle is true. Is there a chance you could convince her out of making him one of her zombies? Quilge asked as he wiped his glasses. Good afternoon to you too, Quilge. Well, I promised to let her make him one of her collections so. Ichigo trailed off, causing Quilge to sigh in disappointment. I suppose it would be quite rude of me to ask you to revoke a promise you made to your lover. Ah, well, I should enjoy what I can, until the time comes. Oh, are you interested in observing how I work on him? I could give you a few pointers if you want. I'll pass on that offer, since I don't really think I'm the type to enjoy such activities. Although I suppose I could ask Jazelle to give you some more time before she makes him a zombie. It's not like we really need him anytime soon or ever. Quilge put his glasses back on, and replied with a small grin. Ah, that would be splendid. You have my gratitude, Kurisaki. If you need a favor from me, feel free to ask. I'll keep that in mind. Have fun. Ichigo muttered and left the cell, not wanting to know what Quilge was going to do with Tsukishima. Wait, Kurisaki, wait, please. Ichigo couldn't help but find the situation humorous as he heard Tsukishima's desperate calls. It was him who was saying, please, to Tsukishima just a few weeks ago, but their situation was completely reversed at this point. Ichigo had to suffer through Tsukishima's mental torture, while Tsukishima was subjected to physical torment. Revenge wouldn't bring back what he had lost, but it was much more sweeter than he had expected. Ichigo was really looking forward to the war. Sternritter Training Ground, Silburn, July 7th. Baz B was sprawled on the ground with bruises all over his body, the obvious sign of defeat as clear as day. Ichigo held out a hand which Baz B took hold without hesitation. Baz B groaned as he pulled himself up with the help of Ichigo, his body aching from being thrashed badly by Ichigo's hands. You know, your Schrift is annoying as hell. I mean, you actually made me forget how to use Flugbildskrit. Wait a second, don't tell me that this is permanent. If I have to learn how to use it again from scratch, I'm going to bring a girl to your quarters. You'll never be able to sleep without thinking about me having sex with a girl on your bed. Baz B threatened, which Ichigo responded with a scowl. No, it isn't permanent, but I could make it permanent though. Maybe I should make you forget about anything related with sex and let Jugram give you the talk. Baz B's expression turned into a one of pure horror at Ichigo's threat. Oh, hell no, I'll never hear the end of it from Jugo. I swear I won't bring up my sex life again. You mean to say your non-existent sex life, right? Bambietta said to Baz B as she made her presence known to the two. Ichigo laughed as Baz B looked like he had swallowed a lemon at her words. As if a hot guy like me would. Yeah, right, I said it 100 times and I'll say it again. The fact that your Schrift is the heat doesn't automatically make you hot. As far as I know, there aren't that many hot guys in Silburn and it sure isn't you. Bambietta rolled her eyes as she cut off Baz B's usual antics. What she wasn't expecting was Baz B's retort. As that's so, then tell me, who are these supposed hot guys? Baz B said with a smirk. It seemed like he would finally get one over Bambietta. Wah, what kind of question is that? You don't have to be such a sore loser just because I didn't include you in my list, you know. Bambietta spluttered, and Baz B caught her eyes shifting to a specific direction, exactly where Kurisaki Ichigo was picking up a towel to wipe his sweat off his body. Oh, I see, So that's your definition of hot. Well, I must say, someone gets all the luck. Now where's Jugo when I need him to say something philosophic about luck and balance and all that shit? Baz B said with a smug look painted on his face. Bambietta looked at Baz B in horror, and was about to silence him by removing his existence from the world when Ichigo interrupted their small bout. Catch, Baz B. And what's this about luck and balance? It sure sounds like something Jugram would say, Ichigo said as he tossed a towel to Baz B, obviously unaware of the earlier part of his remarks. Thanks, Ichigo. That's because it is exactly what Jugo would say. You see, I needed Jugo to say something like that. I mean, Baz B ducked in surprise as Bambietta's reishi sword slashed through the air. Hey, wait a second. I can't fucking use my Flugbildskrit yet. Too bad for you, cuz I fucking don't care. Just die already, you bastard. Bambietta yelled, the sounds of explosion following. Oh, shit, burner finger 1. Ichigo was fascinated in their fight, mainly in the use of their respective shrifts. They were basically wreaking havoc on the training grounds with their destructive abilities, the heat, and the explode. He was surprised with how well Baz B was avoiding any clean hits even without the use of Flugbildskrit, everything around him being blown up into dust. Stop moving and face your death like a man, Bambietta said, as wings made out of reishi flickered into existence behind her. Ichigo spotted her left hand moving towards the right one, which was where she wore her Leiden hand. Ichigo sighed and appeared behind her with a masterfully executed Flugbildskrit, and grabbed her hand. I think that would be enough, Bambietta. His Majesty wouldn't be happy if you actually use your Volsta unknown currency and dig. You aren't actually trying to kill him, right? Ichigo tried to calm her down, a little surprised at just how much she was riled up by Baz B for whatever reason. Her reishi wings could be triggered on their own if her emotions got out of control, although it didn't really give her any powers that comes with the Volsta unknown currency and dig. The Quincy, Volsta unknown currency and dig was a technique completed with the forming of the Hylogenshine, which needed the Leiden hand to be used on her own will. I got a little carried away. Sorry, Bambietta mumbled in shame of letting her temper get the better of her. Baz B let out a sigh of relief as he really wasn't in the condition to survive Bambietta's Volsta unknown currency and dig. You know, I would have welcomed it if it wasn't for the fact that I can't use my Flugbildskrit. Seriously, when does this thing wear off? At least another 10 minutes. Ichigo did the math in his head, and replied. Baz B groaned in annoyance upon hearing that. Kurisaki, don't you ever use your Schrift in our spar. Ever again. I know that you really don't need it to match my Schrift anyway. Ichigo shrugged nonchalantly, not really caring. Sure, I already had enough experience using it against Jugram anyway. I really can't forget the look he had when I made him forget about how to wield his sword, although I was a bit surprised when he used his Schrift to redirect it against me afterwards. You've gotta be kidding me. He can actually do that? Bambietta asked in disbelief. Yeah, so I made him forget how to use his Schrift in our next fight. I think it kinda pissed him off, since he placed an only swords rule in our training afterwards. Ichigo said casually, which made Baz B to clutch his stomach while cackling like a madman. Bambietta let out a giggle at that part, surprising Baz B who had never seen her giggle like a girl. Anyway, I think I'll take my leave, since the girls should be expecting me soon. You coming, Bambietta? They wanted to play some games, and they ordered me to ask you if you want to join in case I met you by chance. Ichigo asked. No, I came here to train, in case you didn't notice. Bambietta said, and quickly added as she realized that it came out a bit more rude than she intended. I'll see you guys at dinner, okay? Ichigo scratched the back of his head and nodded. Sure, see you later. As Ichigo left the training grounds, Bambietta turned to Baz B and smirked. Enjoy your last 10 minutes. You're so dead today. Yeah, whatever. I suppose I should go soft on you, or your pretty face might get all ruined with burns. Baz B taunted, causing Bambietta's temper to lit up. Not my face, you bastard. Wait, I said 10 minutes. Just die. Baz B was nowhere to seen for the next few days as he mourned for his ruined hair, which took a few months to return to its full glory. Urahara Sha 10, July 21st. 4 people were gathered around a table in Urahara's shop, for the purpose of discussing a matter that has been bothering them for quite some time, namely the disappearance of Kurisaki Ichigo. They had initially thought that he would return by the time of his birthday, only to be proven wrong. Chad, Urya and Orihime were determined to find out the whereabouts of Ichigo, which led them to seek Urahara Kazuki for his help. More specifically, Kazuki's help in contacting the Soul Society to ask for their help. If Ichigo's disappearance was involved with something related to the afterlife, the Soul Society should know about it. The fact that most of their time was free as yesterday was the end of their first semester, made the decision much more easier. Urahara-san, where is Yoruichi-san? She hasn't been around recently. Orihime asked out of curiosity. Oh, Yoruichi-san. She got called back to the Soul Society to be reinstated as the 2nd Division captain, which was about a little less than 3 weeks ago. She informed me that Captain Soi Fon was killed in action by a lone Vasto Lord class Hollow, right after dealing a fatal wound to it. Both the Hollow and Captain died as a result, which is the official story from the Soul Society. Kazuki answered in a way more serious demeanor than usual. He wasn't overly fond of the deceased captain if he was being honest, considering her antagonistic behavior towards him. But that didn't mean he would show any disrespect towards the deceased, even if he thought that there was more to the situation than it seemed. Oh, the 3 teenagers blinked in surprise at the information. They weren't really expecting to hear such news from Orihime's innocent question, and it surprised them greatly. But let's put that aside for now. I have a suspicion of where Kurosaki-san could be, or who he might be with at the moment. It isn't solid, but I can't think of a higher possibility than this. Ishida-san, how much do you know of the history of the Quincy? Kazuki asked. History of the Quincy. The furthest event I know of is the massacre at the hands of the Shinigami, which would be 200 years ago. I haven't heard of anything important that happened before the massacre. Urya replied, confused of where Kazuki was heading with this. I see. Ria Ken-san probably didn't explain it to you then, as did Isshin-san. Urya couldn't help but mutter. What was Ria Ken hiding from me this time? And, Isshin, that sounds kind of familiar. Urya's eyes widened in realization as he remembered that Isshin was Ichigo's father, being mentioned often in Ria Ken's business calls. Urahara-san, don't tell me that Kurosaki is a Quincy. I don't really get where this is coming from. Perceptive as ever, Ishida-san. You see, Ishida-san, Kurosaki-san's mother Kurosaki Masaki was actually a Quincy. If Kurosaki-san was here this wouldn't be my story to tell, but since he's absent I suppose there won't be any problems. It all happened about 22 years ago or so when Shiba Isshin, who was a Shinigami captain at that time, fought with one of Aizen's pet projects. Isshin-san could have defeated the Hollow easily, as he was a captain-class Shinigami. But he was ambushed by a third party, which could only be one of Aizen's subordinates or Aizen himself. Long story short, Kurosaki Masaki defeated the Hollow while receiving a wound in the process. The problem was that it wasn't a normal wound. Kazuki paused for a moment, and looked into Urya's eyes. The visards are the result of Aizen's hollowification experiments. You can guess what Aizen's experiment did to Masaki-san. And you'll know what that would mean, Ishida-san. Urya's face lost color as he realized what would happen should a Quincy be subjected to the hollowification process. It would have killed her without a doubt. Just receiving a wound from a Hollow is dangerous enough, but hollowification. No Quincy could even hope to survive that. Yes, you're right about that. If it wasn't for me, I used a special Digai to bind Masaki-san and Isshin-san's souls together in order to save Masaki-san's life. Needless to say, it was successful since Kurosaki-san and his sisters were born. So yes, Kurosaki-san is in fact a Quincy from his mother's side. And a part Shinigami from his father's side at the same time. Urya took a glance at his Quincy cross as he took in the unexpected information, quite unsure of what to think of it. Kurosaki Ichigo, a Quincy. It was the most unorthodox combination he could ever think of. But still, the thought of another Quincy other than him and Ria Ken being alive. No, 3 if all the Kurosaki siblings were the same. Kurosaki-kun was a Quincy like Ishida-kun. Orihime exclaimed, her usual self returning a little at her favorite topic, mainly about Ichigo. If what we always heard about the Quincy from Ishida is true, Ichigo really isn't a person that fits the description of a Quincy. Chad said while looking towards Urya. Well, you see, Urya sheepishly looked away before muttering, it's about the Ishidas, not necessarily the Quincy as a whole. All Quincy's pride ourselves in being one, but all I've learned came from my grandfather. I wouldn't be surprised if there were Quincy who were more like Kurosaki, rather than me. Kurosaki's lack of control comes from his immense Raryoku, and also his lack of proper training. If he was trained in the way of the Quincy, I doubt that his control would have been that horrible, even if it wouldn't be as perfect as it could have been with a normal Raryoku reserve. Kazuki snapped his fan shut to gain the attention of the teenagers. Putting that matter aside, there is a reason Kurosaki-san's heritage as a Quincy comes into the picture as an important piece. Ishida-san, your mother Kudagira-san died, or rather, when did she fall into a comatose state? Kazuki asked in a dead serious tone. Urya, who was about to retort at the mention of his mother's death, noticed the seriousness and replied somewhat hesitantly. I think it should be about 8 years, and maybe 1 or 2 months. The day she lost her consciousness was exactly the same day when Kurosaki-san's mother died at the hands of a hollow. But did you notice? Masaki-san was an Ect Quincy before she was involved with Aizen's hollow, and became a gemist after that incident, which was explained to me by Ria Ken-san. Not that I know anything of what defines an Ect and gemist. As far as I know, she could have easily won against a low-level hollow considering how she took down Aizen's pet hollow. Don't you find it odd that she died to a mere hollow, not even on the level of Amanos? The fact that both yours and Kurosaki-san's mother basically died on the same day. Kazuki paused for a moment, and spread his fan to give himself some dramatic effect. What you didn't know about the history of the Quincy is that there was a war between the Shinigami and the Quincy a millennium ago. The king of the Quincy, Yhwach, declared war on the Shinigami. Only to be completely annihilated by the Shinigami. But there is an old Quincy folklore that prophesies the Quincy king's return. The sealed Quincy king would regain his pulse after 900 years. Another 90 years and he would regain his intellect. After 9 more years he would regain his strength. No one in the Soul Society believed it even if they knew the existence of it, and neither did I. Until that day, when Masaki-san and Kudagira-san were struck by the Quincy King's Ozwa unknown currency HLEN. Ria Ken-san said that the Ozwa unknown currency HLEN was something only the Quincy King could use, which strips the gemist Quincy of their powers to make them his own. Kazuki explained grimly, causing Urya to clench his fists while Orihime gasped in horror. Chad stayed silent, focusing on Kazuki's story. You were saying that this Quincy King was the one who killed my mother. Urya gritted his teeth as Kazuki nodded in reply. I think I understand where you're going with this. The Quincy King obviously returned, and is going to wage war against the Soul Society once more. Urahara-san, you think that Kurosaki is currently with him on or against his own will? Am I correct in my assumption? Kazuki nodded. I think, on his own will, would be a little more likely, if you consider Kurosaki-san's situation before he disappeared. And this is where Captain Soi Fon's death comes in as well. You see, Yoruichi-san found out that Captain Soi Fon was in the world of the living to capture Tsukishima Shakura, whom they have been keeping track of due to the dangerous potential of his fullbring. Yoruichi-san also said that they had lost track of Tsukishima after that day. I found it odd that the date when Tsukishima's fullbring lost its effect was just a day before Yoruichi-san was called back to the Soul Society, which made me to think about the possibility that Kurosaki-san was at the same place during that day. Yoruichi-san was able to relay the location, which was about 50 miles north from Karakura town. This is the residue hollow Reiatsu sample I was barely able to recover. Ishida-san, do you recognize it by any chance? It wasn't Urya who answered Kazuki's question. Orihime gasped as she recognized the Reiatsu, which was almost similar to the one she had felt at the Dome of Las Noches. It's Kurosaki-kun's hollow's Reiatsu. It is a little less menacing than what I felt that day, but I know that it is the same. Urahara-san, please don't tell me. Orihime pleaded, her eyes watering at the realization. If the official story was true, Kurosaki-san would be dead. Before Kazuki could finish, he was interrupted by Orihime, who had burst into a fit of sobs. Kazuki signaled Urya to calm her down, which took a few moments. As I was saying, Kurosaki-san would be dead if the official story was true, which Yoruichi-san believes to be wrong. They only assumed the situation from the conversation they heard from the Denreishinki, which was destroyed immediately after the Vasto Lord fired a Sero. Hirako-san, who was sent as a reinforcement, also had his Denreishinki destroyed, which means that Kurosaki-san probably didn't want his identity to be known to the Soul Society. Kazuki concluded, which prompted Orihime to let out a sigh of relief. Urya was deep in thought for a few moments before he asked Kazuki a question. Urahara-san, do you think the Quincy King will attempt to recruit me to his cause? I don't know, Ishida-san. I really don't. Then we should scratch the thought of asking the Soul Society's help. The best we could do for now is to train ourselves until the war actually comes. I sincerely hope that Kurosaki knows what he's doing, Urya muttered. We're talking about Kurosaki-san, who really isn't the type to do something wrong, Ishida-san. Kazuki said, while keeping his thoughts to himself. If I were to bet, the Soul Society would do more wrong in a month compared to what Kurosaki-san could do in his lifetime. Urya wasn't expecting to hear anything remotely close to the information that was disclosed today, when they decided to come and ask for Kazuki's help. The truth of his own mother's death, Ichigo's heritage as a Quincy, the Quincy King. He really was given a lot to think about from Kazuki today. Ichigo's personal quarters, Silburn, December 25th. Warning. Lemon. Ichigo woke up at a tickling sensation to find his sight full of luscious light green hair. The owner of such vibrant hair buried her head to the crook of his neck, mumbling her greetings. Hey stud. Ichigo blushed mildly at Candace's murmurs, a trait that never disappeared even after all those intimate moments he shared with the girls. It was a trait apparently the girls loved greatly, finding it to be cute. Hey yourself, gorgeous. Did you sleep well? Ichigo asked as he ran his hand down her hair, which caused Candace to mewl in response. MMHMM. I don't wanna get up though, Candace said as she tried to mold herself onto Ichigo's body. As much as I would love to oblige, Meni and Gigi won't appreciate you having me all to yourself today. Ichigo chuckled, and asked a moment later. How did you convince them to let you sleep with me alone last night anyway? I thought it was only Tuesdays and Fridays. I won with a scissor. You're mine until noon, so less talk, more cuddle. A quickie before and during a shower would be a great way to start a day. Ichigo couldn't help but feel thankful that their relationship was surprisingly working out, for more than 5 months at this point. The thought of the girls having a game of rock scissors paper to decide who gets to have him on the night of Christmas Eve was quite endearing, really, although it made him feel bad for leaving Jazelle and Menina's out for a day like this. I want your full attention on me, sweetie. Candace whispered seductively, and suckled on his lower neck, adding another hickey to his skin for display. Who am I to refuse if you ask so nicely? Candace gasped as she felt Ichigo's hand snaking down her back, lingering on her ass for a few seconds to grope the divine ass that now belonged to him, and him only. Soon Ichigo's hand settled down on a spot where his fingers could easily gain access to her pussy, which was wet and sticky from his own cum still present from their last night activities. His fingers tread around her slit, intent on teasing her. Come on, stop being mean, sweetie. Oh, Candace arched her back as Ichigo flicked her well-hidden clit, which was an extremely sensitive spot to her. Ichigo usually didn't play with her clit as it only served in cutting down their time by tiring her out. He was a stamina freak after all, even in bed. While Candace's libido was the highest out of the 3 girls, and the only one with past experiences of sex, her preference was a long sensual and loving sex rather than intense fucking. It actually came to his surprise that the most kinky one was Jazelle, while Candace was a big fan of lovemaking, second to Menina's who loved sweet-talking while they never parted their bodies for hours. Ichigo slid a finger into her slit, followed by a second. Candace purred in pleasure as Ichigo pumped her pussy with his fingers, and leaned up to nibble on his lips. It soon evolved into a full-out battle of tongues, the 2 lovers moaning into each other's mouth. Candace on her part was going crazy with the way Ichigo occasionally touched her clit with his thumb, while Ichigo was enamored by the toe-curling electric kiss. He thought that it was something that came naturally with being the Thunderbolt, and all, which wasn't the truth in the slightest. Girls needed a weapon up their sleeve to keep the men in check, after all. Although it was more like keep up with her lover, in this case. Candace never expected Ichigo to become a god of sex when they had their first time together, only to be proven wrong as the first was followed by the second, third, and many more. Ichigo himself was surprised as well, which was replied by a smug-looking Zangetsu later on with a single word, instinct. "Oh, I fucking love you, sweetie." Candace's voice hitched as Ichigo's cock filled her up completely and more. Ichigo was the best out of her few past lovers, and the absolute best. It wasn't only because of how gifted he was in the size department, not that it didn't count as a valid reason. It was the love and attention he showered her with during their lovemaking. Ichigo kissed her intensely as he started to move in and out of his very own goddess, noticing the way she was basically flooding with love juice. Candace broke the kiss as his cock bumped into her cervix, moaning at the pleasure. Every time Ichigo slid out she moaned, and mewed as he filled her again. "Say it, sweetie, I want to hear it." Candace gushed around his thick girth as she peeked for the first time, asking him to say the words she loved the most. It was her habit before reaching her first climax, something Ichigo found absolutely adorable. "I love you the most, my love. Now come for me," Ichigo whispered in her ears and nibbled on her earlobe, quickening the pace of his pistons. "Oh, gods, I'm coming." Candace saw white as she bit on his shoulder, flooding the bed sheets with her cum. Ichigo's hand wrapped around her waist to keep her close to him, while running his free hand down her hair. "That's a good girl. I wanted you to come inside me." Candace pouted about a minute later, as she finally descended from cloud 9. Ichigo kissed her again as he lowered the hand that held her waist to her ass. "That can be arranged," Ichigo said between the kisses, only for another voice to interrupt Candace from answering. "So, you make Ichi-chan say he loves you the most when you have him all to yourself?" Jazelle teased, the mirth showing from her chipper than usual smile. "Gigi, we agreed that the winner gets him until noon." Candace blinked as she followed Jazelle's finger which pointed at a clock, which read 12. "Ugh, why do you have to be so comfy? I didn't know that we slept that late." Ichigo laughed at Candace, who seemed confused at his reaction. "Candy, she changed the clock. There was at least an hour until noon the last time I checked." Jazelle's eyes lit up in alarm at being caught so easily, sweating bullets as Candace's glare was directed at her. Merry Christmas." Ichigo pulled Candace up over his body before she could electrocute the poor girl on a day like this. Candace squealed as she found herself on top of Ichigo in a perfect cowgirl position, his still hard cock sending another wave of pleasure during the process. Ichigo smirked at the girl as he pulled her into another toe-curling kiss, addicted to the taste of the thunderbolt. "Candy, you wanted me to come inside you. Why don't you finish the job?" Ichigo said while groping her marvelous ass. Cowgirl was Candace's second favorite position, right behind the missionary, which became her favorite thanks to Ichigo's extremely passionate style of sex. She just couldn't help but love it when Ichigo showered her with his attention, intent on pleasuring her. Who would have known that such a passionate lover was hiding under the mask of a prudish teenager? But anyway, cowgirl was still one of her favorite positions, because she could see Ichigo's face succumb to pleasure as she rocked his world. But Candace started, only to be cut off by Ichigo's thrust of his hips. "Come now, Candy. Gigi's been pestering me to let her have a threesome with you for months. I know that you really don't like a third person on the bed, but a little Christmas present for Gigi should be a good enough thank you for her decision to share me. Wouldn't you agree? I promise I'll make it up to you if it's any consolation." Ichigo tried to convince her as he peppered her neck with light kisses, not enough to leave a hickey. "Oh, to hell with it. Fine, but it's a one-time thing, Gigi. Don't ever ask me to do something like this again," Candace said, persuaded by Ichigo's kisses. She wasn't sure if she could go against anything Ichigo suggested, if he did something like this to convince her each and every time she refused. "Thank you, Candy," Jazelle squealed, cupping Candace's breasts with her tiny hand. Apparently Jazelle was bisexual, as was Menina's. Ichigo had to admit that he did enjoy the threesomes they shared on occasions, but Candace never partook in such activities. She wanted his attention directed to her and only herself, even if it cut down the time she got to spend with him. He really loved the more affectionate and clingy side of Candace, which was reserved only for their private moments. Gigi. Candace gasped in surprise at the sudden contact, seemingly uncomfortable with it. Ichigo really wasn't sure about how she intended to share him with Menina's initially, but pushed the thought out of his mind. Gigi, come here, and, I think you were in the middle of something, Candy. Candace was reminded of the fact still had Ichigo's hardened member inside of her, as Ichigo twitched his cock by tightening his PC muscles. She sighed in disappointment when her sight of Ichigo's handsome face was blocked by Jazelle's body, but started to roll her hips in order to bring him to his peak. He had made her come intensely as he always did, and she wanted to return the affection he gave to her. Even if it was in the midst of an unwanted threesome. Oh, Ichi-chan, you like lapping up my pussy, don't you? I know you love it, you horny dog. Oh, fuck. Candace was surprised by two facts. One being how Jazelle didn't even bother to wear her undergarments. The second was the way Jazelle was dirty talking with Ichigo. She would have imagined something like this from Liltato if she had a more mature body. But then again, would it be all that surprising if Jazelle was extremely perverted? Candace had to admit, Jazelle's dirty talk was actually turning her on. She made a note to try some dirty talk the next time they had some alone time, and started to ride Ichigo's worship-worthy cock. Ichigo groaned into Jazelle's lower lips as Candace rode him like a stallion, occasionally adding his own movements that brought her to new heights. Oh fuck, you're so good at eating me out. I'm coming, Ichi-chan. Drink it all for me, drink your bitch's cum. Oh, fuck. Jazelle almost shrieked as she came, gushing her juices all over Ichigo, who eagerly drank it all without any complaint. Jazelle slumped down next to Ichigo, and watched in heated fascination as Candace leaned down to kiss him. He just drank my cum, you know. Would that count as you eating me out indirectly? Jazelle couldn't help but ask, and giggled when Candace froze in shock. Candace stared at Ichigo's eyes with her own wide open in shock, only to be soothed by the look of concern he gave to her. She broke the kiss, and muttered, I don't care, I want you to fuck me hard, sweetie. Fuck me into the bed so I can't even think of walking out of it today, and use my pussy as your cum dumpster. Ichigo was surprised at the girl's dirty talk but found it more than enough enticing to comply. He swiftly changed positions with Candace laying on the bed on her front while he embraced her from behind. Candace was about to protest that she wanted to see his face, when Ichigo turned her face and kissed her deeply. Candace felt like she was on heaven as Ichigo's cock slammed into her cervix again and again, as if trying to achieve the impossible and penetrate into her womb. The fact that he was kissing her all the time, as he fucked her at a pace that could only leave her sore afterwards, only served to quicken her climax. Ichigo almost came when Candace's pussy tried to coax his cock to paint her insides white as she reached her peak, but pushed the urge down and kept up the pace. Candace soon lost the strength to keep up with the kiss and collapsed to the bed, mewling incoherent words every time he plunged inside her. Ichigo knew that he wouldn't last long before he came, so he was determined to make her cum at least once more before he did. He slid a hand down to her breasts and played with her nipples while the other hand trailed her spine. I love you, fucking, oh, God, you're my God, oh. Candace almost fainted at the most intense orgasm she had ever had, and Ichigo groaned as he thrust one last time balls deep into her, releasing rope after rope of his sperm. Ichigo collapsed beside Candace, feeling a little exhausted at the intense sex. Candace let out a small snore when Ichigo was about to kiss her, causing him to chuckle and plant a kiss on her brows. Wow, that was hot, Jazelle muttered in an obvious state of arousal at watching such lovemaking. She couldn't help but think back at the time when they lost their virginity to each other, when they made love hesitantly instead of fucking each other's brains out like they did nowadays. She still liked the kinky sex they had with or without Menina's very much, and that was something which wasn't going to change sooner or later. But the loving sex Ichigo and Candace shared made her yearn for the same attention for the first time in months. You got all wet while watching that, didn't you? Ichigo asked, still a little out of breath. Well, yeah, but I think I'd like to hear some sweet words today. Can you do that for me, Ichi-chan? Jazelle asked, Surprising Ichigo, as the last time they had sex without any dirty words running around was probably at least 3 months ago. He realized that watching him and Candace making love had pushed her in the mood for some non-hardcore sex. I suppose I could give you that, my light. Jazelle mock-gagged at the use of the L word, something she thought to be a bit too cheesy for her taste. I thought we had this talk months ago. Right, sorry, but I couldn't help it. Ichigo chuckled, not mentioning the fact that Menina's absolutely loved it when he called her my light when they were alone. It really was their secret, as he honestly thought that if Jazelle actually heard him saying that to anyone else than herself, she would never let him hear the end of it. And probably make him swear to never call anyone other than herself my light, or something remotely close to that. Ichi-chan, sweet talking, starting now. Jazelle ordered her boyfriend with a sweet voice, causing him to roll his eyes in mock exasperation. Ichigo pulled Jazelle on top of him, and started to peel off her clothes, which was surprisingly still on her body. He had thought that she would have stripped it off when he ate her out, but apparently he was wrong. I think your tits grew a little. Jazelle burst into a fit of giggles, smacking his chest in a playful manner. Ichi-chan, you sly dog. That wasn't sweet talking, but I suppose I'll take it. Ichigo gave her a warm smile and cupped her cheeks like he always did when he said something romantic or sweet to her. Jazelle blushed lightly as Ichigo stared at her eyes wordlessly, knowing just how much he liked her eyes. You've been getting a lot more softer since we started dating, did you know that? The other Ritters don't avoid you blatantly like they used to. No, but is that a good thing? We're His Majesty's knights, you know. Jazelle replied, not realizing the small change. I guess it isn't if you only think about that part. But have you thought about our future? You know, our kids, our family. I think it's a good change, a welcome one. Ichigo said, surprising the older girl greatly. She was the older one in their relationship, even if it didn't look like it, and here was Ichigo thinking about their future. She became giddy just at the thought of spending her life with Ichigo. I guess you're right if you say it like that, Jazelle said while treading her hands through Ichigo's hair, which became noticeably longer than when they first met. She liked the way he grew his hair, a shared sentiment within their group of girls. Hell, even Soi Fon seemed to agree with that part, and that was really saying something. Do you really need me to sweet talk you? I'm kind of having a hard time with thinking up something to say, in case you didn't notice. Ichigo complained, which received a sharp glare from her. You didn't have any problem saying, I love you the most, my love, to Candy. Does it have something to do with the fact that you like her the most? No, I mean, no Gigi. You know that I love you all the same. Well, everyone knows that I have a favorite regardless of me being fair. You really shouldn't make me say that in front of Candy, even if she's sleeping. Jazelle smiled as she knew fully well who his favorite was, and felt a little sorry for making him uncomfortable. Sorry, Ichi-chan, but really, can't you think of something sweet? I want it so badly. Ichigo huffed as he understood that he had no way out of this. Fine. Ichi. Jazelle squeaked as she became trapped under Ichigo, his face barely an inch away from her own. I love the way you shiver when I touch you. Jazelle shivered as Ichigo's hand touched her side. I love the way you melt when I kiss you. Jazelle couldn't think of anything as she became a puddle of goo from the heated kiss. I love the way you look at me when you want me. Jazelle saw the reflection of herself in Ichigo's eyes, breathing heavily while yearning for his love, lusting for his touch. Most of all, I love the way you call my name when you need me. Jazelle finally succumbed to her need of her lover. Ichigo. Much better. Ichigo murmured into her ears and nibbled on it, eliciting a gasp from his lover. Jazelle let the thought of hearing anything sweet slide away, as she knew what she really wanted. No, needed. She needed to be loved the same way he made love to Candace, and he was giving her just that. Who needed a threesome with Candace, when she could have Ichigo all to herself? Kinky was good, but love was something better. Needless to say, the three were late for lunch by a whole 2 hours. Surprisingly, Menina's didn't seem to care that she was left out, which was explained later that night with how she won with a rock. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment and subscribe, as well as checking out the author on fanfiction.net.